how many of you actually wrote the exam this year? Is there anyone who's written the exam? Okay, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? 6 people have written the exam. And how many of you are going to write the exam next year? Everyone is writing the exam next year, right? ठीक है, okay. नहीं ऐसा होता है ना, लोग 2-2 साल की भी तैयारी करते हैं भाई यहाँ पे, मतलब people. So now the objective of this particular session is to just give you an idea of what is our analysis of the paper which has been put out by UPSC, and what have been the trends which have evolved over last couple of years, and what has been specific analysis which has come out of the paper this year. Right, there are a number of changes. Kuch every year UPSC is famous as some people call it as the unpredictable public service commission, and I to an extent agree with that, because every year there is a different set of questions, and with a different with a different flavor which is thrown at students every year. For example, last year they had questions where they had asked that if people, those who get medals or win medals in the Olympics, should they be rewarded with certain doles and money and everything, or should the government be responsible for promotion of the grassroots level sporting activities in the country? So this was a question which one could not prepare for as such, right? You had to put in all your knowledge and understanding, whatever you have gained over last 20-25 years of whatever conversations you have been having with people, watching televisions and opinions which you have formed, and put them down in the paper in those 9 minutes. This year they have gone back maybe a couple of years back in terms of the kind of questions which they have asked. इस साल पेपर थोड़ा ज़्यादा फैक्चुअल था. कुछ जो पार्ट्स थे क्वेश्चंस, कुछ जो क्वेश्चंस थे स्पेसिफिकली वहाँ पर बहुत ज़्यादा फैक्चुअल नॉलेज वाज नीडेड. फॉर एग्जांपल, देयर वाज अ क्वेश्चन ऑन कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस and the guidelines which or the measures which have been taken by the government post the 2009 Satyam scandal. Now this is a question which is very specific in nature, and it requires a bit of knowledge base. You cannot attempt this question without that particular knowledge base. Or say there was a question on the FCRA guidelines. What have been the changes which have taken place in the FCRA guidelines this year, and what critically analyze them, and what are going to be the implications of these FCRA guidelines, right? Then there was a question which was there on the khap panchayats. Again uske andar pucha tha ki bhai critically analyze the legislature, the actions which have been taken by the legislature, the executive and judiciary. Now again this requires a bit of knowledge base. You need to specifically know which are the measures which have been taken by the government, and how successful or how unsuccessful they have been, whether are there any criticisms around them, or so and so forth, right? Then there was even one more question which was there on this question was on what are the changes which have been brought in the Arbitration and the Conciliation Act of 1966 through the recent ordinance which has been promulgated by the president, so and so forth. Again बहुत ही ज़्यादा specific question था, knowledge specifically चाहिए थी, and this was a bill which was also pending in the parliament, and little bit had been written about it here and there, but not a lot. So therefore this was the kind of pattern which had been adopted by UPSC pre 2013. जब pattern change हुआ उससे पहले UPSC क्या करती थी, that they used to ask a number of factual questions which were directly from certain current affairs related news, एंड वहाँ पर कुछ उसके एस्पेक्ट्स होते थे. कोई पर्टिकुलर जजमेंट आया होता था सुप्रीम कोर्ट का, या कोई पर्टिकुलर बिल आया होता था, उससे रिलेटेड वो क्वेश्चंस पूछते थे. दे हैड समहाउ चेंज दिस इन लास्ट 2 years in 2013 and 14, but this year they have seen to gone back on that. So what it basically shows as an overall trend from UPSC side is that you cannot focus only on conceptual parts, but even the knowledge base is as important as the other things, right? This is one thing. The second part which students ask us about is the source. What are the sources which are to be referred? Especially paper 2 seems to be a big confusion for a lot of people, because paper 1 में क्या होता है, you have set sources, NCERT है, normal law है, जो भी है, कुछ there are set sources, there is a set defined syllabus as far as world history, post independence, modern history, art and culture, all these things are concerned. But what do you do about paper 2 is a question which keeps coming up recurrently, right? So I'm just taking this general part first, and then we will move on to the discussion of the paper. It's been divided into two parts. The first 10 questions are going to be taken by me, and the next 10 would be taken by Surat sir, right? So now talking about the sources. Now a lot of students come back to us and ask, is Lakshmikant enough for mains? Obviously it is not. For example, if you look at the question on ordinance making power this year, I'll just read out the question to you, and tell me if you people think this can be a question answered by just reading Lakshmikant simply, right? So yeah, the question is that resorting to ordinances has always raised concerns on violation on the spirit of separation of powers doctrine, right? There is a separation of powers doctrine, that there has to be a compartmentalization of powers between the executive, legislature and the judiciary. So it says that the resorting to the ordinance route in order to pass legislations has always raised questions about the spirit of the separation of the powers doctrine, which is in a way enshrined in our constitution also in number of ways. Now it says that while noting the rationales justifying the power to promulgate, analyze whether the decision of the Supreme Court on the issue has further facilitated to resorting to this power, right? So it says that even though you have to analyze, or even though you have to note the rationales which are provided by the executive while the ordinance is promulgated. So what does the executive generally says? It says that the parliament is not functioning and the opposition has created such ruckus in the parliament, and we need to pass these important legislations which are hampering the growth, the economic and the social growth of the country, and so on, so many so forth things, and therefore we need to take the ordinance route to pass the legislation, or we do not have the requisite majority in either of the houses, or so on and so forth, or the house, one of the houses or either of the houses is not in the session, and there has risen this really emergency kind of a situation where we need to pass this legislation to ensure the safety, security, the growth and the development and so on and so forth of the country, right? Now, so you have to justify the rationale, and then it says that analyze whether the decision of the Supreme Court. So Supreme Court over the period of last 30-40 years has given out several pronouncements and given out several rulings on the ordinance making power of the executive, right from the DC Vadava case and the Cooper case, etc. Even in the Bommai judgment there were a few evidences. So it says that you have to tell or analyze whether the decision of the Supreme Court on the issue has further facilitated to resorting this power. And then finally there is a third part to the question which says that should the power to promulgate the ordinances be repealed, right? So if you look at it, there is hardly a lot of factual information which you need to put into the question, but it's more of factual information which has to be amalgamated with your views and opinions on the issue, right? What it means is आपको ये बताना है कि ordinance making power को repeal कर देना चाहिए कि नहीं. ये आपको आंसर लक्ष्मीकांत में नहीं मिलेगा, right? ये आपको आंसर शायद डीडी बासु में भी properly नहीं मिलेगा. So what you have to do is that once you are preparing topics from say Lakshmikant, abhi all of you would be starting to prepare for prelims, especially the ones those who are going to appear for the first time next year. You people will start focusing on prelims maybe say February, January onwards dedicatedly. That would mean that once you're preparing the topic for prelims, you cannot compartmentalize your preparation for the mains. आप ये नहीं सोच सकते कि पहले मैं प्रीलिम्स की तैयारी कर लेता हूँ एंड फिर मैं मेंस की तैयारी कर लूंगा. ट्राई एंड कीप ऑल दोज थिंग्स हैंड इन हैंड. दैट मीन्स जैसे ऑर्डिनेंस मेकिंग पावर का आप टॉपिक उठा रहे हो, सो देयर इज आर्टिकल 123 एंड 213 एंड व्हाट आर द वेरियस प्रोविजंस. 6 वीक्स का एक डेडलाइन होता है एंड सो फोर्थ, एंड देन देयर इज अ पार्लियामेंट्री कन्वेंशन आल्सो व्हिच हैज कम अप इन इंडिया दैट द गवर्नमेंट ऑफ द डे हैज टू पुट फॉरवर्ड अ रिपोर्ट citing the statement of reasons and the objectives because of which it had to introduce the ordinance. Basically, when an ordinance is introduced, after that 6 weeks के within government को उसको pass करवाना होता है within the reassembly of the parliament, right? Now once, so that basically means that ordinance has to be tabled in front of the parliament. सो जब इस ऑर्डिनेंस को वापस टेबल किया जाता है पार्लियामेंट के सामने कि आप इसको प्लीज एक प्रॉपर लेजिस्लेटिव रूट से लॉ बना दीजिए, देयर इज अ स्टेटमेंट ऑफ रीजंस एंड ऑब्जेक्टिव्स which the government has to put forward in front of the parliament, telling that these were the reasons because of which we introduced this ordinance. What was such an emergency need, or what was the situations or the circumstances under which we had to put forward this ordinance, right? So that the government could be held accountable by the parliament, so that there is no malified intention which is there on part of the government when it is introducing an ordinance through the, or when it is introducing a law through the ordinance route. This is a convention. This is a unwritten convention which is revolved under the parliamentary conventions in India. Sorry, is it okay? I'm not sure if sir, is it in the rules of Lok Sabha or is it a convention? It's a rule of Lok Sabha. It's a rule. Okay, it's in the rules. Fine. I'm sorry for that. So it's in the rules of the Lok Sabha. But in any case, the point which I'm just trying to mention here is that you will have to go one step beyond all these rules and conventions and the articles of the constitution and form your opinion on these issues. Now the question comes that how do I form my opinion? It's not, there is no if and a but or a yes and a no answer to this. This is a very complex procedure which takes time and which can only happen through extensive reading. Of good sources, and one of those sources remains to be the Hindu, right? Plus apart from that, there are a large number of government reports and committees and commissions वगैरह का report है, right from the Punchi Commission to the ARC to even the Venkatacharya Commission, the NCRWC report which is there. So you people could refer those kind of reports also in order to form your opinions. The care which you have to take while forming any such opinion is that it should be a balanced, rational opinion, which should be, the basis of which should be the Constitution of India, and the basis of which should be the rulings which have been given out by the Supreme Court of India. One is that. Second thing is that always back your opinions by facts and figures. There are a large number of questions in this paper this year, in fact even in paper 3, which actually asked you, do you agree or what is your opinion? You cannot simply state that these are the facts and the figures and that's it. You have to express your opinion, and the UPSC is wanting to see what your opinion is, and that opinion, the more of it is backed by facts and figures, the much easier would it be for the examiner to give you marks, right? I mean, I could just write a particular opinion that no, this has happened or this has not happened, but the moment, or say, let's assume that has poverty declined or not. Now there is something called as figures by which you justify that. You justify it indirectly through terms like how inflation has gone up and so forth, and because of that it to a certain extent shows that poverty has gone down or whatever, right? All of this can only be done when you have certain source facts and figures prepared with you. One is that. Second thing is sources की जहाँ तक मैंने बात की, हमेशा one thing which I keep telling people as far as paper 2 is concerned is that go topic by topic in paper 2. You cannot pick up ARC, you cannot pick up sources and tell yourself that now I am going to sit today and for next 15 days I am going to finish off this source. That is not the way to prepare for paper 2. You will have to go topic by topic, pick up each and every topic in your syllabus. For example, there is a topic which is given as dispute redressal mechanisms or regulatory commissions. Look for relevant sources for that topic rather than looking for a source and then trying to prepare that topic from that source or trying to prepare that source completely. That strategy is not going to work because there is a lot to prepare, there is a lot to revise, and it will be a very disjointed preparation. Rather, if you pick up, say, regulatory commissions, you read a little bit about regulatory commissions from, say, some coaching institute material. Maybe we have some material prepared on this. There are a few books which are available. So you prepare some chota bits and pieces here and there on regulatory commissions and on the regulatory institutions of India. Post that, you look for some expert committees or reports which have come on regulatory commissions. There was a Damodaran committee which came, right? Then there was FSLRC which came for the financial sector. So you pick up those reports, Do not go through the entire report, just go through the executive summary of the report. Go through any analysis which might have come on that report in the newspaper. FSLRC की recommendations के ऊपर जो Financial Sector Legislative Reforms Commission है उसके ऊपर कुछ newspaper articles आए थे. Skim through those newspaper articles, gather 5 points from here, gather 5 points from here, make your own notes, and you will be done with the topic. Rather, if you try and pick up the Damodaran Committee report and then tell yourself that अच्छा अब मैं 5 दिन इसको पढ़ूंगा, that way there are hundreds and hundreds of reports and it's going to be almost impossible for you to prepare any topic. So pick up each and every topic of our syllabus, and mind you, each and every topic is very important. I mean, I found it very surprising that UPSC actually went back to asking the corporate governance guidelines, etc. In a way, it was always there in the news, but the fact is that this is a topic which is clearly mentioned in your syllabus. And what this shows is that UPSC can always go back on topics which they have asked even in the last few years. One is that because कहीं ना कहीं पिछले 1-2 सालों के अंदर CSR के ऊपर, corporate governance के ऊपर questions आए हैं. So one was not expecting a question on corporate governance as such, but it came. So each and every topic is important. You cannot leave any topic in the syllabus, whether it is paper 1, 2, 3, 4. कहीं पे भी कोई भी topic नहीं छोड़ सकते हो आप, right? One is that. So this is about the sources part. Are there any questions on the sources part? Another thing is that newspapers, which are the newspapers to be referred? If you try and actually look up for the sources for the paper for this year, you will realize that more than 90% of the questions, at least I will talk about paper 2, have been framed in and out or somewhere around the Hindu newspaper only. Hindu still remains to be the major and the most prominent source for UPSC. Whatever people may say, Business Standard and this and that and so many other things, Hindu still remains to be the most prominent source, right? Read that paper religiously every day. There are 2 approaches to what you do after reading the newspaper. Some students make notes, some do not, and some rely on the notes of the coaching institutes, right? My suggestion to you would be that adopt a midway strategy. जहाँ पे आपको लगता है कि कुछ बहुत important article है या बहुत important topic है, make your notes. Something which you feel is an article which is very very important. Say universal health coverage के ऊपर के श्रीनाथ रेड्डी ने article लिखा है, poverty estimation या poverty reduction के ऊपर Dr. Amartya Sen has written an article. Then it inevitably becomes a very important article, and not only an important article because at the same time if it's been written by Dr. Amartya Sen, you would expect its quality to be a notch higher than the other articles in the newspaper, and make notes of that, right? Then apart from that, you have monthly current affairs material which are anyways coming out from our end. And if I have to, once I go into the details, I'll tell you that most of the questions were covered in some way or the other, either in the test series or in the current affairs in a way, right? किसी ना किसी form में covered थे. I would not say that directly ऐसे ही question पूछ लिया UPSC ने, but most of the themes and most of the topics had been covered in the current affairs and had been covered in some or the other question in the test series. And a very simple reason for that is it's no rocket science, because we also rely on the newspapers for making our current affairs notes. We also rely on various other sources which are available in the market for making our current affairs notes and even for the test series. And therefore it is very natural that ultimately there will be a lot of correlation between the current affairs notes, the test series questions, the UPSC, the questions which UPSC asks, and so on and so forth, right? So this is about the sources, and Hindu newspaper आपको रोज पढ़ना ही पड़ेगा. आप कुछ भी करो. Lot of people also ask us that till what time should we read the newspaper. My suggestion is read it all year round. Maybe just 15 days before prelims you could leave it, and जो वो 15 दिन का आपका छूटेगा उसके लिए आप कुछ वेबसाइट्स हैं और बहुत सारे सोर्सेज हैं जहाँ पे आप उनको रेफर कर सकते हैं. हमारे करंट अफेयर्स के मटेरियल आते हैं, उनको रेफर करें. बट do not leave newspaper reading at any point of time. This is going to be the single most important source for your preparation for next 1 year. Do mind that. And plus newspapers are not only important कि इससे ही questions बनकर आते हैं, but they are also important in helping you form your opinion, helping you improve your comprehension skills, helping you sharpen your analytical skills also. Right? कई बार जब आप एडिटोरियल पढ़ रहे होते हो तो ऐसा होता है कि the author starts writing from some particular premise and you are not sure what conclusion the author is going to take. But when you start reading, you develop the habit of reading newspapers on a regular basis. By the time you like are into 3 to 4 months of newspaper reading, you would start drawing your own conclusions and premises even before you read what the author has written. So in a way you develop that ability to preempt what the author is going to say, and that's how you develop your analytical skills, even your comprehension skills to a large extent, which are going to help you in a lot of other ways. Not ऐसा नहीं है अभी मतलब CSAT का value चला गया तो this thing, you never know, the new committee has been formed, they might again come back with CSAT. So and comprehension skills are not only required for CSAT but question को समझना भी तो होता है, right? So this is about the sources and the general trend in the pattern which has been observed as far as this year's paper is concerned. So and then as I mean there is no substitute to hard work as far as this exam is concerned. It is not possible to not write answers and then go there directly in the examination hall and do well in the paper. This exam remains to be a writing exam. आपको वहां पे 20 क्वेश्चन अटेम्प्ट करने हैं 180 मिनट के अंदर. That requires a substantial amount of practice in terms of how quickly you interpret and comprehend a question. Secondly, how quickly you frame a structure and an answer in your mind. And then third, and the most important thing, how quickly and how well do you write it down on the piece of the paper, connecting it with all the other subtopics in the syllabus, connecting it with all the relevant examples and all the information and knowledge which you have. Let me tell you that most of the students, those who will be writing the mains next year, would have almost the same kind of knowledge base. There might be a few hundreds, those who would be really good and would be having a lot of knowledge and would have really consolidated that knowledge. Other than that, most, and then there will be these bottom 500,000, those who would have got through prelims somehow and then they would not have prepared well for mains because of various reasons. But apart from that, the major chunk of the candidates, that is 10 to 12,000 of the candidates, the knowledge remains to be 19-20 जिसको कहते हैं उतना ही रहता है. What really is going to make a difference is your answer writing skills, and that can only be improved by writing more. Either join test series, मैं either तो बोलता ही नहीं उसके बारे में कि do join a test series, right? Whatever you want to, that is your decision. Join any good test series where you get a decent amount of feedback on what answers you have written and the questions are good. That has to be the basic minimum criteria. Join the series, write the test religiously, and most importantly also do attempt previous year questions paper. जो previous years के question papers हैं, अगर आप उनको थोड़ा सा ढंग से attempt करेंगे तो आपको एक orientation मिल जाएगी. एक बार ना एक चीज और before I just move on to the next thing, which is that जब आपका कोई भी टॉपिक पढ़ना चालू करते हो, it's always better to look for the questions which have come on that particular topic in the previous years and the questions which have been asked by UPSC on that particular topic. जो previous year question papers market के अंदर available होते हैं, बहुत सारे तरीके के होते हैं. Try and look for previous year question papers which have topic wise segregation also, right? For example, if you are reading let's say the जुडिशरी पढ़ रहे हो आप, तो उससे पहले आप जुडिशरी से रिलेटेड जितने भी पिछले 15-20 साल के क्वेश्चंस हैं वो एक बार देख लीजिएगा. यू विल गेट एन ओरिएंटेशन इन टर्म्स ऑफ हाउ यू शुड बी रीडिंग दैट टॉपिक. अदरवाइज क्या होता है, वो प्लेन लेक्चर रीडिंग बन जाती है एंड यू जस्ट पिक अप द टॉपिक एंड यू स्टार्ट फ्रॉम द फर्स्ट वर्ड एंड देन यू फिनिश एट द लास्ट पेज, बट यू रियली डू नॉट नो व्हाट यूपीएससी इज गोइंग टू आस्क आउट ऑफ दोस टॉपिक. So it's important to get that orientation, and that orientation is best received from attempting or at least reading the previous year question papers. Once you read a topic, prepare that topic, and once that topic is prepared, go ahead and write a test, or maybe another thing which you could do is frame your own questions. ऑर्डिनेंस मेकिंग पावर के ऊपर ही जब आप लक्ष्मीकांत से टॉपिक पढ़ो, डीडी बासु से पढ़ो, तो खुद अपने आप उसको टॉप क्वेश्चंस सोचो क्या पूछ सकती है यूपीएससी. व्हाट इज ऑर्डिनेंस मेकिंग, व्हाट इज ऑर्डिनेंस मेकिंग पावर, व्हाट इज द यूज ऑफ ऑर्डिनेंस मेकिंग पावर, शुड द ऑर्डिनेंस मेकिंग पावर बी रिपील्ड, what have been the instances of the use of ordinance making power in the recent years in the country, what have been the judicial pronouncements which have been there, what are the reasons because of which the government resorts to using ordinance making power. आप ये 6-7 क्वेश्चन what, how, why, when अपने आप से पूछो, try and write answers to them, your topic would be prepared and you would be prepared so well that you would not need touch this topic again till the last few months of revision. And in a way, through those answers which you would have written, they would also act as notes for you. So you would have done two things. You would have done your answer writing practice, plus you would have also done your note making. It's good for revision as well as for your entire improvement of the answer writing skill, right? So try and adopt this approach. Try and see if this works for you. There might be multiple strategies. This is just one of them. But I personally suggest to you that do consolidate each and every piece of information which you are gathering from here and there, because end में इतना होता है कि आप 1.5-2 साल तैयारी करते हो, इतना सारा information होता है, it's not possible to revise all of it, and you might think कि ये तो मेरे को आता है, अब इसको तो मैं समझ लिया मैंने for life, but human brain is susceptible to having memory loss about that particular thing until unless you keep revising it. And the best way to revise it is to either make notes within the book or within the notebook wherever you are studying it from, or make separate notes. Especially for important topics, do make separate notes, right? और वो topics especially जो आपको पहली बार पढ़ने में समझने में बड़ी मुश्किल हुई थी, उनके लिए तो specially notes बनाना ही बनाना. जो topics समझ में easily आ गए उनके लिए शायद फिर भी आप notes ना बनाओ और वहीं पे थोड़ा scribble कर लो book के अंदर तो समझ हो जाएगा. But for the ones which you are not really very sure of, do make separate notes for them, right? Okay, so let's just have a general discussion about the first 10 questions as I said. So which is the first question in your question paper जो आपको मिले अभी? Uniform Civil Code, right? Okay. Right. So see, this topic was in news a lot, especially because the Supreme Court of India had also asked the government that what have you done for the implementation of the Uniform Civil Code. And कम से कम नहीं तो 2 एडिटोरियल्स आए थे हिंदू के अंदर अक्टूबर नवंबर के महीने के अंदर अबाउट यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड एंड व्हाट आर द इम्पेडिमेंट्स व्हिच आर गोइंग टू बी देयर इन द इम्प्लीमेंटेशन ऑफ द यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड. इज इट प्रैक्टिकली पॉसिबल टू इम्प्लीमेंट द यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड इन द कंट्री, right? So there is a bit of basic fundamental which is there as far as this particular question is involved. What is that basic fundamental which is there? That is, आप जब लक्ष्मीकांत पढ़ोगे या डीडी बासु पढ़ोगे तो उसमें भाई आर्टिकल 44 ऑफ द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन दिया हुआ है एंड बताया हुआ है दैट इट इज द रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी ऑफ द स्टेट टू एंश्योर दैट देयर इज अ यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड फॉर द सिटीजंस ऑफ द कंट्री. सो फ्रॉम देयर यू वुड ऑल्सो अंडरस्टैंड व्हाट डज यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड मीन्स, right? Basically in India you have various religions. We are a multi-ethnic, multi-religious country, and in this multi-religious, multi-ethnic, diverse country we have various personal laws which are governing various religions. Let alone various religions, various sects of the religions are also governed by different personal laws and different customs. For example, polygamy might be allowed in some particular religious text, it might not be allowed in one particular religious text. The succession from the parent to the child might be different in a particular religion, it would be different in a particular religion. Now this debate has raged on right from the time when India's constitution was being written. Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was one of the staunchest proponents for having a uniform civil code in the country, because he felt that it is the downtrodden and especially the women, those who suffer the most because of not having a uniform civil code in the country, right? So if you read through Ramchandra Guha and maybe some other books, you will read about the Hindu Code Bill which had been introduced and which failed in the parliament, and that led to the resignation of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar from the government. And then the Hindu Code Bill was broken down into 4 bills, and then these bills were introduced at different times in the parliament by Jawaharlal Nehru, and then a few of them got through in form of the Marriage Act and so on and so forth and so on and so forth. But the debate still continues to rage on whether we should have a uniform civil code in the country or not, right? Now this is one question, should we have or not is one question. The other one is, even if we agree to have a uniform civil code, is it practically possible to have one? What are the various challenges and the impediments which are going to be there for the uniform civil code? So this was basically what the question was trying to judge. So the question says that discuss the possible factors that inhibit India from enacting for its citizens a uniform civil code as provided for in the directive principles of state policy, right? Can someone tell me what would be the structure, not the answer, what would be the structure to this question, to the answer to this question? Kya structure, how will you begin, what will you write in introduction, what would be your body, what would be your conclusion? General structure kya hoga? Yes.
Sir, first we will explain brief that what is UCC, Uniform Civil Code.
Okay, so first you will talk about UCC, right? And then what all will you talk about here?
Sir, what is it like, what it will ensure or what is it for?
Okay, what and what is the purpose of
Yes.
of the Uniform Civil Code? Okay.
And the question says about DPSP, so we will mention the constitutional provision.
Okay, so you will also relate it to the DPSP and the constitutional provision in the constitution which talks about the UCC, right? What else?
And then recent development in one or two lines like Supreme Court or
Okay.
or Saab Bano case maybe.
Okay. So,
Yes,
okay.
Facts.
Okay, so you will talk about the Supreme Court judgment and maybe something like that, and the recent developments which have taken place as far as the UCC is concerned and the kind of debate which is there. Okay, then.
And then directly coming to the impediments, like what are inhibiting UCC.
What are the challenges which are going to be there? Okay, and are you going to divide these challenges also in some way?
I didn't do that.
क्या और कैसे स्ट्रक्चर कर सकते हो बताओ इसको challenges को और किस तरह से better structure कर सकते हो?
So एक तो legal challenge है and implementation and enactment.
So how do you arrive at this particular law and so on and so forth? And then you are saying
very important legal and implementation also.
okay, so you are saying that how you get the social consensus on this particular issue, how it is going to get enacted, which is the particular body which is going to enforce and enact this, right? Enforcement, enactment, एक ही बात हो गया. So enforcement, enactment, and which is going to be the institution which is going to ensure the implementation of the UCC and so on and so forth, and right?
In Constitution in Article 25 to 30, they are also against
Right.
the split of
Okay.
the-
So right. So you would also talk about the freedom to religion and how that could perhaps be an impediment to that. So again, social, legal, and what are the right? और फिर conclude कैसे करोगे इसको? Okay. So
Consensus building space, more focus
एक जनरल अप्रोच क्या होगी इसके, जनरल कंक्लूजन क्या होगा? What would be the general flavor of the conclusion?
for the sake of the
State wise implementation, phase wise implementation, right? What else?
women's right is a very prime issue, and it, in this especially is a violation of the
Hmm.
women's. So for the sake of the women's, we should pass this bill.
अब ये तो मतलब वो तो ऐसा हो गया ना, मतलब ठीक है. और gradually pass, phase wise implementation, state wise implementation. Someone talked about how there has to be role of civil society organizations, NGOs in building a greater consensus, use of religious community leaders and so on and so forth. Yes.
Challenges, can you briefly mention about the challenges like states like J&K, where applying this UCC would be a bit hard?
Yes, you have to. So again, legal, social, उसके अंदर वो पूरा आएगा. Minorities have to be taken on board. There is a lot of apprehension, especially against the Muslims. That has to be mentioned because it's been specifically the Muslims which have opposed uniform civil code right from the independence, and even the constitution makers and the lawmakers from the beginning have been very apprehensive and reluctant of what might be the reaction of the minority community, especially the Muslims, if the uniform civil code is concerned, because as far as the Sikhs and the Jains and the Buddhists etc are concerned, वो उनको किसी ना किसी तरीके से हिंदूज के अंदर ही कंसिडर किया जाता है. But when it comes to Muslims, that's where the problem lies. even Christians are a problem, but they are not a very significant minority of the country. So that can be handled in some way. But as far as Muslims, because they are a big chunk of the country, so that is there. JNK is there. Plus, कुछ लोगों ने ये भी बोला. So, example is one state which has been very successful in implementing the Uniform Civil Code. So could there be certain examples, or could there be certain learnings which could be adopted from that Goa model and can be incorporated into the implementation of the Uniform Civil Code? Yes.
Current perspective, there was a lot of debate on secularism. Will it be appropriate to add 2-3 lines?
Well, where किस तरह से लिखोगे बताओ मुझे.
So, like, we need to first look into our very definition of secularism in order to understand the domain of UCC.
Okay, so I get the hang of what you're trying to say. So you are saying that the state should remain this thing from
Ideally, it is only to achieve the ideals of
secularism,
but
right?
it's not defined.
So maybe you could write that in a line, but again the problem is that do not go into the depths of explaining that, because the question majorly देखो आपके ना आंसर जो मार्क्स मिलेगा ना वो इस पार्ट का और स्पेसिफिकली जो ये है ना इस पार्ट का फर्स्ट और थर्ड का है मेजॉरिटी मार्क्स, राइट? बिकॉज द क्वेश्चन सेज दैट व्हाट आर द फैक्टर्स दैट इनहिबिट इंडिया फ्रॉम इनैक्टिंग. तो ये हो गया, मतलब आप मान लो 60% मार्क्स 70% मार्क्स तो इसी का है, एंड जो बचा हुआ 20-30% है वो ये है दैट यू हैव टू टेल दैट व्हाई यूसीसी इज सो इंपॉर्टेंट एंड डायरेक्टिव प्रिंसिपल ऑफ स्टेट पॉलिसी में क्यों मेंशन्ड है, क्या पर्पस है, व्हाट इज यूसीसी. सो उसको और सुप्रीम कोर्ट का एक आधा लाइन में लिखोगे या कोई रिसेंट डेवलपमेंट लिखोगे करंट अफेयर से रिलेट करने के लिए, तो उसमें ही आपका टाइम निकल जाएगा. सेक्युलरिज्म वाली बात आप इंपॉर्टेंस में ही लिख सकते हो यूसीसी के, राइट? यस, यू हैड पॉइंट. अच्छा, ओके, हाँ जी. So okay, so I mean I do not necessarily disagree with what you are saying, but the fact is that यार यूपीएससी डज, अभी आप क्वेश्चन अगर आप पढ़ोगे ना, अगर आप स्ट्रेट अवे एकदम लिख दोगे कि चैलेंजेस दिस थिंग, यू वुड नॉट बी सेटिंग कंटेक्स्ट, एंड वो थोड़ा सा कंटेक्स्ट सेटिंग रिक्वायर होता है, राइट? एंड दैट कंटेक्स्ट सेटिंग इज ऑल्सो रिक्वायर्ड बिकॉज देन योर entire answer flows very naturally, because you need not go into writing into depths about what exactly UCC is and so on and so forth. You should say that what is the purpose of UCC. The purpose of UCC is to ensure that there is a common personal law for all the citizens of the country, because it has been noticed in the past that especially the females and the downtrodden of the society have been exploited because of various differences in the personal law, and something which he mentioned, that the entire concept of Indian secularism is also something which is based on the concept of UCC to a large extent. Even the constitution makers wanted to see this through, it was not, and so on and so forth. And then you could talk about Supreme Court, right? So this is hardly going to take like maybe a minute of yours or 1.5 minutes. Then और इसके अंदर अगर आपको देखो 250 वर्ड का आंसर लिखना है, this is going to be like 50 words at maximum 50 words. This is the portion which is going to take your say 200 words. Plus you have to also understand one more thing. इस क्वेश्चन में challenges जो है ना वो बहुत ज़्यादा आप there is not a lot to write as far as the challenges are concerned. So you will have to, in order to give the answer a very comprehensive look, you will have to write about UCC and the purpose of the UCC also, right? Is there any other way any one of you could suggest that we could approach? So one of the ways which he suggested was that we could go to the challenges straight away. Any other way you think maybe the answer can be approached, or maybe this can be restructured?
First highlighting the diversity of India and then the ideals of.
Okay, so again I mean not a bad idea, but again diversity of India ना एक बहुत.
Giving the context to the challenges.
Okay, again, so that would be more or less covered in what UCC and what is the objective of UCC, because आप UCC के बारे में जब बताओगे कि मल्टी एथनिक मल्टी रिलीजियस कंट्री है जहाँ पे there are various personal laws governing the people of the country, therefore the UCC is a requirement which was considered even by the constitution maker as seen in the article 44 of the constitution, and even the Supreme Court recently has asked the government about its intention to implement the UCC. In this light, some of the challenges which are there as far as the UCC implementation are concerned is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? Always do remember that it's a better option to structure and break down your answer into as many parts as you can. What I mean by that is जब challenges लिखे हैं तो इन challenges को जैसे मैंने किया ना कि enactment में और freedom of religion या legal, social, administrative challenges and judicial challenges या कुछ भी जो भी challenges या financial challenges किसी भी topic के ऊपर, the more you break them down into various subparts, the easier it would be for you to think in a more structured way and write a more comprehensive answer with more points. One is that. Second is that for the examiner also it shows an impression that you have taken a very structured approach to your thinking. That tells him that you think in a very structured manner, and that always helps in getting more marks. Because examiner के लिए भी easy होगा check करना. और दूसरी बात ये है कि you never know, none of us have seen the model answer from UPSC, but the way UPSC is trying to keep its questions as objective as possible, there is a high probability that the challenges which are given by UPSC in its model answers also are broken down into various subparts, right? So do try and make your answer as structured and break it into as many parts as you can. It always helps you, and plus words भी save होते हैं यार. अगर आप legal social लिख दोगे और उसके बाद उसके आगे कोलन लगा के लिख दोगे, the examiner would be easily able to grasp. वरना आप लिखोगे is one of the legal challenges which is associated with. फिर secondly, as we have seen, so you're saving your words, you're saving your time, you're making it more structured. So that is the thing, right? इसके अंदर ना एक ये होता है term SAPL. ये एक्रोनिम होता है एक, अभी बता सकता है कोई इसका कुछ? सोशल, इकोनॉमिक, पॉलिटिकल, एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव, लीगल. सॉरी, PEST वो भी कोई भी कैसे भी कर लो यार. मतलब मैं एक ये बताया, कुछ भी कर लो. मेरा दिस इज वन फ्रेमवर्क व्हिच आई एम टेलिंग यू दैट इन केस अगर आपको किसी चीज को ब्रेक डाउन करना हो, दिस इज वन थिंग विच यू कैन यूज. एस्से लिखना हो, एस्से के अंदर हमेशा डायमेंशन सोशल, इकोनॉमिक, पॉलिटिकल, एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव, लीगल, कहीं पे भी कोई भी टॉपिक हो, कोई भी इशू हो, उसकी डायमेंशंस अगर ढूंढनी हो तो दिस इज द बेस्ट वे टू डू दैट, राइट? Okay, now let's move on to another important question which came this year. This was about the concept of cooperative federalism. By the way, this question was something which we had asked in our test series. This was also in test 740 के अंदर भी है शायद मेरे ख्याल से ये, and plus I think we also asked it in one of the full tests also in the test series about the Uniform Civil Code. Plus this was also covered in the current affairs material of I think October 2015 है ना. उसके अंदर ही challenges लिखे हुए थे. What are the various challenges which are there? कौन सा institution decide करेगा, क्या नहीं करेगा, right? Fine. Now the second question is about the concept of cooperative federalism. It says that the concept of cooperative federalism has been increasingly emphasized in recent years. So again, just like strategic या बहुत सारे और जो words होते हैं, even cooperative federalism has become the buzzword of last few years, right? And Niti Aayog is said to be the harbinger of cooperative federalism in the country, and it is going to usher in a new era of cooperative federalism in the country as soon as the Planning Commission was abolished. So it says that highlight the drawbacks in the existing structure and the extent to which the cooperative federalism would answer the shortcomings, right? So what does cooperative federalism mean? Can someone explain it to us? Okay, cooperative federalism means coordination between the state and the center. Okay, what else?
So between the healthy relationship on all the simple thing on between center and the both two second and third tier, that is state and panchayat level. So that is cooperative federalism.
Okay, so basically see, if you look at the kind of the way Indian federalism has evolved, पहले क्या था 1967 तक single party rule था. Federalism in India was a very healthy federalism between the states and the center, because it was a single party rule, and the kind of relationship between the center and the states enjoyed was a very healthy relationship. What started happening post the 1967 was that a large number of regional parties came into power in various states, and there were a lot of friction which started happening between the states and the center on the issues of finances, on the issues of legislation, administrative issues, Article 356, appointment of the governors, all India services, and बहुत सारे issues states और center के बीच में evolve करने शुरू हो गए 1967 के बाद, right? Then came the era of bargaining federalism, as some people call it. Right, bargaining federalism started happening in 1990s when you had the coalition governments coming into the country. So the state government started bargaining with the central government in terms of that you give us this much in terms of sub package and ye and wo and all these things, and we will give you support for your government at the center. Something which Mamata Banerjee has done wonderfully, right? So then a lot of other achievements. I mean, Mamata Banerjee is just one example. So this was the phase of bargaining federalism. Then came an era of competitive federalism as well as cooperative federalism are the buzzwords which came up. Competitive federalism is that center has only few resources in its hand. The country on a total has a few resources in its hand, and it is the states which are competing with each other. And they are not only competing with each other, but they are also competing with the central government in order to get a majority of the chunk of those resources. So finance commission jab devolve karta hai, state governments would ask that instead of 32 give us 42, or 42 ke bajaye 52, or 52 ke bajaye 62, or whatever, right? And similarly the state governments would have competition among themselves also, that give us the special category status, right? Or give us more resources or more funding through the grants and aids and so on and so forth, and give us more money through the line ministries, etc. So this is what is competitive federalism. And then there is something called as cooperative federalism, which is where the states and the center forget their differences and they come together at the same platform in order to cooperate for the developmental issues of the country, right? For example, if the GST if implemented would be a perfect example of cooperative federalism in the country, or even VAT for example, where states forgo a certain part of revenue, because there was a danger or a risk when VAT was implemented. States were very apprehensive that we are going to lose some revenue if VAT is going to get implemented, and at the same time the center assured them that if you are going to implement VAT, in case any losses occur, we are going to take care of that. So this is a perfect example of cooperative federalism. Another example of cooperative federalism versus say an imbalanced federalism would be planning commission. Planning commission mein the majority stakeholders were the central government, all the appointments were made by the central government, all the grants and all the loans, etc., whatever was being given was decided by the central government. State governments had a minimal role except for in the case of NDC, right? Now it gave way to the Niti Aayog. Niti Aayog, you have a large amount of representation of the states. In fact, it's an NDC in a way, right? You have the representatives from the states in the administrative territories and so on and so forth. So that is also a perfect example of cooperative federalism, right? So the question is that the concept of cooperative federalism has been increasingly emphasized in recent years. So when you begin your answer, you could just talk about what is cooperative federalism. Why has cooperative federalism become such an important term in the recent years in the country? Because there are so many thorny issues on which the central government cannot proceed ahead without the help of the state governments, right? Whether it is the land acquisition or the land reforms, whether it is the labor reforms and so on and so forth, even APMCs आप पढ़ते हैं, right? जो agricultural produce marketing committees हैं, उसके ऊपर भी until unless there is a coordination from the state government, the central government cannot proceed ahead. Plus international issues, river sharing agreements. There have been a large number of instances of thorny issues which have come up between the states and the central government. For example, in the case of Teesta River water sharing agreement, Dr. Manmohan Singh, when he wanted to sign the Teesta River water sharing agreement with the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, the Chief Minister of West Bengal tried to stall this because she thought that she had not been taken into confidence, right? Then even in the Tamil issue, this particular problem came up when India wanted to vote against Sri Lanka, but the Tamilian parties in Tamil Nadu did not want that. So that's why cooperative federalism has acquired a lot of importance in the recent years. And now then moving on to the next thing, it says that highlight the drawbacks in the existing structure. So what is the existing structure? Again, look at what is the financial structure, legislative structure and the administrative structure which exists, the arrangement which exists between the states and the center as of today. Finance Commission solely appointed by the central government, right? नीति आयोग भी till recently exist करता था, planning commission exist करता था, where again the discretion was completely in the hands of the central government, right? Even special category status and so on, so many things were in the hands of the central government, grant and aid by the central government, right? So there was a mismatch of financial powers between the center and the state. States always had a grievance, whether with respect to horizontal distribution of money or whether with even vertical distribution of money. Then legal ke case mein bhi, there have been a large number of instances which have been cited by the states that the center is trying to encroach upon our domain using Article 253, 356, right? Could talk about all India services in case of administrative. You could talk about the imposition of not only state president rule under Article 356, but you could also talk about the deployment of state central paramilitary forces etc. in the states in case of riots and so on and so forth. Appointments which are being made, removals which are being made, right? So all of these are very thorny issues which have been impending or which have been challenges to cooperative federalism in the country. So you have to mention about all those challenges, and then it says that discuss how cooperative federalism can help to tackle these issues and what more is required. So again, what are the advantages of cooperative federalism, how it can help get the states in the center on the common platform on all the issues and so on and so forth, and what are the and how can you help tackle these issues. One, अब यहाँ पर मैं वही बात कह रहा था पहले, पुंची कमीशन के कुछ रिकमेंडेशंस आते हैं. पुंची कमीशन ने आर्टिकल 263 के अंडर इंटर स्टेट काउंसिल को एम्पावर करने की बात की है, राइट. सेकेंड, एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव रिफॉर्म कमीशन ने बोला, सरकारिया कमीशन ने बोला दैट हाउ द अपॉइंटमेंट्स ऑफ द गवर्नर्स and the removal of the governors in the state should be reformed, right. Then you could talk about financial relations, किस तरह से रिफॉर्म हो सकते हैं. प्लानिंग कमीशन को बहुत सारे लोग बहुत समय से अबॉलिश करने की बात करते थे, अब एनडीसी नीति आयोग आ गया है. There has been an increased devolution from the center to the state. There has been a scrapping of the centrally sponsored schemes. The untied funds which are given to the center by the center to the states has also increased a lot, right. There has been more empowerment which has been given to the states as far as what the central government is doing nowadays is now they are creating framework laws. Land acquisition हो गया, labor reforms हो गया, कुछ भी हो गया, they create framework laws and tell the state governments that you can enact laws as per your discretion and as per your requirements. We'll just provide you a direction, right. So these are some of the things which you could mention. As far as again Article 356 का use तो वैसे भी बहुत कम हो ही गया है after the judicial pronouncements which have come out, right. So these are the things which had to be mentioned. So again, yes.
Sir, apart from this, could we also mention about center to local bodies and state to local bodies relation?
Yes, you can mention about that because I remember reading an article in the Hindu on how complete or comprehensive federalism in the country can only be achieved when even the local governments are empowered. So you could make a mention of that in a point. That apart from this, one of the other things is that even the local governments have to be considered as a part of federalism. Federalism is not just between the states and the center, it's also between the states, the center and the local governments. So that interpretation could also be given, but again, not as a major part, just a small point which could be there in your answer, right. So if you would have realized from what I just discussed, again, there is no particular source which you can refer to for these kind of questions. आपको टॉपिक उठाना होगा, डिफरेंट सोर्सेज से इंफॉर्मेशन को गैदर करना होगा, कोलेट करना होगा, अपने नोट्स बनाने होंगे, एंड ट्राई एंड स्प्रिंकल विद एज मेनी एग्जांपल्स एज यू कैन फ्रॉम करंट अफेयर्स व्हाइल यू आर राइटिंग आंसर्स टू क्वेश्चंस इन पेपर 2. ये आप करोगे तो आपको डेफिनेटली मार्क्स थोड़े ज़्यादा मिलेंगे कंपेयर टू पीपल दोज हु आर नॉट डूइंग दिस, ठीक है. नाउ लेट्स टॉक अबाउट अनदर क्वेश्चन. दिस वन इज अबाउट द पंचायत्स. इसके अंदर कंक्लूजन देखो बहुत सिंपल है. इसमें because the question itself says that discuss how cooperative federalism can help to tackle these issues and what more is required. So you will be ending with solutions to how cooperative federalism can be strengthened further in the country. So there is no need to write solutions लिखने के बाद और लिखने की जरूरत नहीं है, राइट. सो स्ट्रक्चर इस क्वेश्चन का ये होगा कि कोऑपरेटिव फेडरलिज्म क्यों इतना इंपॉर्टेंट हो गया है पिछले कुछ सालों में, एंड देन यू कुड टॉक अबाउट व्हाट आर द वेरियस इश्यूज विच आर देयर in the structure which exists, and then the third part would be talking about the solutions and what more needs to be done as far as cooperative federalism is concerned, right? Okay, now let's move on to the next question. This one is about the panchayats. So it says that in the absence of well educated and organized local government system, panchayats, अच्छा एक चीज और है पिछले वाले क्वेश्चन में. So again this question was anticipated for a long time. This is a very evergreen topic. Only thing is that earlier this question was asked in PABAD का पेपर 2010-11 के पेपर्स आप देखोगे, उससे पहले के देखोगे, तब PABAD में पूछते थे ये ऑप्शनल में, पेपर 2 में. अब GS में हो गया है, बिकॉज अल्टीमेटली धीरे 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 करके यूपीएससी ने GS के पेपर्स को भी बहुत क्लोज ले गया है ऑप्शनल के. दैट्स दी हार्ड रियलिटी, राइट. प्लस आई थिंक those students, those who were there in the advanced batch would remember that I covered this topic, because I think someone luckily said that please do cover this topic, and I happened to cover cooperative federalism, right. So again the point is, what I'm just trying to make is that these questions and these topics were always anticipated. It's just about how well you have prepared them beforehand, and अगर आपकी कुछ writing practice है कि नहीं है. ऐसा कोई भी topic नहीं था, majority 90% जो पेपर थे, चारों पेपर, कुछ ऐसा नहीं था जो कि बहुत सरप्राइजिंग हो कि ये कैसे पूछ लिया. ऐसा majority questions में नहीं था. Obviously there will be 10-20% questions which will be there like that, but most of them were very well anticipated by all of us, not only by our institute but even by the students. Even students were anticipating कि ये question आ जाएगा, ये इस पे आ सकता है, and they have been anticipated for a long time, right. Okay, so now this question, in the absence of well educated organized local government system, panchayats and samitis have remained merely political institutions and not effective instruments of governance. Critically discuss. अब इसके अंदर अगर देखोगे ना, ये जनरल क्वेश्चन है वैसे पंचायत की वर्किंग के ऊपर. वहां पे प्रॉब्लम ये होती है दैट बिकॉज ऑफ लैक ऑफ टेक्निकल एक्सपर्टीज, बिकॉज ऑफ लैक ऑफ नो हाउ ऑफ इश्यूज, and lack of clear setting of an agenda in the panchayat meetings, in the gram sabha meetings, in the samiti meetings, etc. There is a lot of ad hocism which is there. There is no proper structure which is there. There is no organization which exists. There is no organized manner in which the panchayats work in the country. This is what the problem of, one of the problems of panchayati raj systems in India is. एक जो प्रॉब्लम हमेशा से एक बहुत पेरेनियल प्रॉब्लम हमेशा डिस्कस करते रहते हैं, वो फिनेंसेस के बारे में करते रहते हैं. ये वाली प्रॉब्लम कहीं ना कहीं मिस हो जाती है. वो इसलिए मिस हो जाती है बिकॉज जनरली दिस टेंड्स टू बी अ लिटिल लेस डिस्कस्ड वन, बट दिस इज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट ऑफ द प्रॉब्लम ऑफ पंचायती राज इंस्टीट्यूशंस इन द कंट्री. व्हाट आर दीज प्रॉब्लम्स? वन इज दैट इन एब्सेंसी, फॉर एग्जाम्पल, देयर आर अ लार्ज नंबर ऑफ टेक्निकल एक्टिविटीज विच हैव बीन गिवन to the panchayats and to the panchayat samitis and to the Zilla Parishad etc. in the country, Panchayati Raj institutions, which can only be done by people those who are trained and have certain expertise, right. For example, district planning committees को plan बनाना होता है. अब एक village plan भी होता है, right, block plan होता है, वो सब aggregate होकर जाता है district planning committee. फिर डिस्ट्रिक्ट प्लानिंग कमेटी उसको पूरा एग्रीगेट करके जो भी करता है, देन इट सेंड्स टू द स्टेट, देन स्टेट्स एग्रीगेटेड एंड देन दे सेंड इट टू द सेंटर. दिस इज व्हाट द बॉटम अप प्लानिंग अप्रोच हैज टू बी. बट इफ यू डू नॉट हैव एनफ एक्सपर्टीज, because if you look at the kind of educational qualifications which are possessed by the members of the Panchayati Raj institutions in India, it is significantly lesser on an average than what is seen in case of parliaments or state legislature. So they do not have that technical expertise. Most of these people, those who enter into the Panchayati Raj institutions, are very young or very new to the entire system of the governance, right. Then even if secretarial support देखोगे आप, central government has all India services, central services, state governments have all India services, state services, they have a number of other appointments. What about the Panchayati Raj institutions? Panchayati Raj institutions have to be dependent upon the officers of the state governments. They have to be dependent upon the state directorates, state departments for any technical expertise, any manpower, any workforce, right? They do not have a dedicated cadre of people or dedicated service which is just working for पंचायती राज. जब secretarial assistance नहीं होगी, you cannot expect these laymen politicians, those who have fought elections in their village, to take care of all the administrative and the governance needs, right? Apart from that, there are number of other issues. Political, इसके अंदर एक और चीज लिखी है that they have remained merely as political institutions. सिर्फ political issues discuss होते हैं, technicalities discuss नहीं होती, because technicality discuss करने के लिए expertise चाहिए होती है, understanding चाहिए होती है, secretarial assistance चाहिए होती है, documentation चाहिए होता है. That all is not available to any of these Panchayati Raj institutions in the country, right? These are the problems which have to be elaborated upon. Again, the best way to prepare for this topic is look for the Administrative Reforms Commission report on Panchayati Raj institutions. You will get ample of fodder points, and believe me, you need not go through the entire report. Even if अगर आपने executive summary और recommendations भी पढ़ ली ना, तो आपको समझ में आ जाएगा कि problems क्या हैं. उतना करना भी sufficient होगा, because once you know the solutions, तो आपको problems भी तो पता ही है automatically, right? And then it says that you have to critically discuss. So इसके अंदर अब current affairs का flavor कैसे डाला जाए? Do put in or do mention about that recently there have been moves which have been made by the Haryana and Rajasthan government for introduction of educational qualifications. Now there could be a argument for and against both in this case. Argument for आप सब लिख सकते हो, arguments against भी ये है भाई, look at the state legislative assemblies or the parliament, there is no educational qualification which is prescribed there. There have been instances of people or of politicians, those who have been excellent administrators in spite of them not being highly educated. Plus, if you put any educational qualification etc. as a criteria, you will be berefting a large section of your society from being a part of governance. That includes women, that also includes a lot of downtrodden sections of the society, the scheduled castes, the scheduled tribes, where the literacy rates are generally very low, right? Apart from that, this is going to create a lot of legal hassles also. अभी ये हो जाएगा. तीसरी चौथी जो चीज होगी वो ये होगा that you might have a lot of posts lying vacant in these Panchayati Raj institutions, right? Or a lot of undeserving people might just become the members of Panchayati Raj institution because there is a lack of popularly elected people, because जो पॉपुलर होगा उसके पास एजुकेशनल क्वालिफिकेशन नहीं होगी, एंड जिसके पास एजुकेशन क्वालिफिकेशन नहीं होगी वो पॉपुलर नहीं होगा, राइट? सो इन अ वे दे वुड नॉट बी रिप्रेजेंटेटिव ऑफ द society, they would not be representative of the wishes of the people. So this is what has to be mentioned, and as far as the structure part of this question is concerned,
Even after the Supreme Court judgment that the laws are okay, even after that
you can this bhi negative to negative है ना, मतलब Supreme Court has said that this is constitutional and there is nothing wrong with it, and I'm not saying that you say that this is the problem with Supreme Court judgment. You can always give a fact based or an opinion based view on this, that there are going to be the challenges which are going to be there in implementation of this act or this move. Plus always remember that this question is not specifically about this, ये वहाँ से draw किया गया है इसका inspiration question का. This question is broader and it is more general about the working of Panchayati Raj institution and the problems which are there in the working of the Panchayati Raj institution in the country, right? I think that this was again a medium difficulty kind of a question and would have been attempted by most of the candidates, right? अभी तक जो तीनों questions हैं मेरे को लगता है कि maximum candidates would have done well, except maybe cooperative federalism में कुछ candidates might have faced problem. Otherwise first and the third questions most of the people would have done well. Conclusion इसमें third में again read the question. It says that critically discuss. So you will once discuss जब भी question होगा, you will have to take a final standpoint, and in this the final standpoint could be that even though the educational qualification and non-organization of Panchayati Raj institution is a critical issue which needs to be addressed, but at the same time there are a number of other issues also. So try and give a broader solution. Talk about how there is a problem of funding also, right? Or how devolution of powers is also not taken place, how devolution of funding is also not. So Panchayati Raj institution today are bereft of a large number of powers and funding. Those issues also need to be simultaneously handled along with ensuring proper organization of the Panchayati Raj institutions, right? So that is one stand which you could take. Other than that, you could also, you know, take a thoda sa tilted type of a stand. What I would suggest is take a balanced stand on this particular question, a broader solution, right? Yes.
So, what it means like a well-educated and organized local level government system.
Huh.
So, what all comprises organized local level government?
Organized local governance system means that the meetings are being conducted properly. There is just अभी पार्लियामेंट जो आपका सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट है ऑर्गेनाइज्ड है, मिनिस्ट्रीज हैं, डिपार्टमेंट्स हैं, हर डिपार्टमेंट हर जो उसके पास एक स्पेसिफिक एरिया होता है देखने का. पंचायत में ऐसा है क्या? नहीं एग्जिस्ट करता है. एक स्ट्रक्चर एग्जिस्ट करता है कि ये पर्टिकुलर लोग इस हेल्थ को देखेंगे, ये लोग एजुकेशन देखेंगे, ये लोग सैनिटेशन देखेंगे, ऐसा है? नहीं है. देन डू सॉरी rules and procedures in which should be governing the Panchayati Raj institution. Then do they have enough documentation होता है ढंग से काम का? Is there a proper procedure which exists that once we raise a request it goes to the state government, then it comes back? Are there any grievance redressal mechanism which are existing? Are the meetings of gram panchayats being held regularly? Is there a proper quorum which is being followed? This is what you mean by organized gram panchayats or organized Panchayati Raj institutions, right? Meetings time पे होना, elections timely conduct होना, ये सब थोड़ी बहुत चीज़ें जो हैं वो कहीं ना कहीं 73rd 74th amendment ने कर दी, but a lot of it still remains to be achieved because there is no specific division of powers, division of work, organization of work. They do not have secretarial assistance and all these things, right? Okay. Now let's move on to the next question. This one again I'll just rush through this one. This one is about the Khap Panchayats, and this has always been in news again in last 2-3 years, and in fact we were anticipating a question on this topic last year, and one of the advanced जो topics हम बनाते हैं उसके अंदर 2014 के अंदर इसके ऊपर एक बहुत अच्छा material बनाया गया था kangaroo courts के ऊपर, right? Because last year there were a lot of news and this and that, honor killings. इस साल बहुत कम रहा, but again UPSC जो आपके लिए करंट है वो तो है ही है UPSC के लिए करंट, बट UPSC के लिए आपके लिए वो भी करंट होना चाहिए जो UPSC के लिए एक साल पहले, मतलब किसी और के लिए एक साल पहले करंट था, ठीक है? तो UPSC has developed this habit is what I have peculiarly observed in last 2 years. They have started to go back 2 years back somehow and pick up topics from there. ऐसा नहीं होगा एकदम छोटा सा टॉपिक उठाएंगे. खाप पंचायत is a big issue, so they'll pick up these big important issues, but they have this habit of going back 2 years, 1 year back. So what it essentially shows is that भाई 3 महीने पहले अगर न्यूज़पेपर पढ़ना चालू करोगे, 3 महीने पहले अगर प्रिपरेशन चालू करोगे तो कुछ नहीं होगा. This is a long marathon which has to be run, and 1.5 years जो आपका है वो आपको पूरा dedicated लगाना होगा इसके अंदर, ठीक है? 1.5 year जो whatever you're putting in, that has to be done. You cannot expect that सिर्फ जुलाई onwards जो है current affairs उसी से questions आएंगे, ऐसा नहीं कर रही है UPSC. Lot of topics this year they have done this. Cooperative federalism भी ना इस बार बहुत ज़्यादा इतना important नहीं था, last year बहुत ज़्यादा था because नीति आयोग and this new government had come into being and they were talking a lot about cooperative federalism. इस साल इतना ज़्यादा न्यूज़ में नहीं था, बट अगेन दे आस्क्ड, शायद हो सकता है एक साल पहले का ही पेपर हो, आई डोंट नो, आई मीन, और एक साल पहले ही, आई एम नॉट जस्ट सेइंग, बट ऐसी चीज़ें UPSC इवन प्रीलिम्स का पेपर देखोगे ना आप, इस साल का प्रीलिम्स का पेपर आप उठा के देखिएगा, बहुत सारी जो बॉडीज़ थी उनके ऊपर, इंटरनेशनल बॉडीज़ और ये सब के ऊपर इन्होंने क्वेश्चंस पूछे, वो बोल रहे थे कि रिसेंटली हैपेंड समिट. अब वो रिसेंटली हैपेंड समिट एक साल पहले हुई थी. So they are doing that as far as prelims and mains both concerned. ठीक. Now this one is Khap Panchayats have been in news for functioning as extra constitutional authorities, often delivering pronouncements amounting to the human rights violation. You all know about the pronouncements which have been given out by Khap Panchayats. So that is what has to be in a way written in the introduction also. Introduction में आपको Khap Panchayats के बारे में और थोड़ा सा ये जिस तरह के pronouncements ये लोग देते हैं, whether it is that women should not be wearing jeans or they should not be carrying mobiles or eating chow mein makes women more susceptible to rape and so on and so forth, and all these things, right? Now it says that discuss critically the actions which have been taken by the legislative, executive and the judiciary to set the things right in this regard. So as far as the judiciary is concerned, judiciary is already declared that honor killings are unconstitutional and people those who are committing these crimes should be brought to the books. Plus apart from that, even some of the state governments tried to move ordinances or tried to amend their laws with regards to the honor killings so as to make the punishment very stringent and the enforcement be ensured, right? Apart from that, even though the executive and the legislature have from time to time given out certain they've made the changes in the rules and honor killings have been declared this and that, and some of the state governments also talked about abolishing the khap panchayats etc., but not a lot has been done on this, right? Khap panchayats still remain to be rampant in the country, and it's not that the problem is not with khap panchayats as such. The problem is with the functioning of the khap panchayats and the kind of regressive thinking which they bring into the society, and not only that, the kind of pronouncements which have been given out by them, which includes even chopping off of hands of women and marrying of women with the rapists and so on and so forth, and so many illegal pronouncements which have been given, right? Eviction of people from the society and honor killings and so many things, right? So this is what has to be in totality mentioned in this particular question. As far as the total approach is that you give a brief introduction of the khap panchayats and why they have been really in news because of their extra constitutional pronouncements etc., and then you have to talk about some of the steps which have been taken by the judiciary, the legislature and the executive. All of this can be found in last year के अगर आप थोड़ा सा newspapers छाकोगे तो you will be able to find a number of things, and then you have to also write down what are there any positives which have come out of the action which have been taken by the legislature and the executive, right? And you have to finally जब आप answer conclude कर रहे हो, you give a way ahead, give a sort of final perspective of how what needs to be done with khap panchayats. The balanced approach would be, a lot of people say that khap panchayats should be abolished. Well, that's definitely not the solution because they have a lot of cultural and social and historical significance. You cannot do away with such institutions in just a moment. What has to be done is that there has to be reform of khap panchayats which has to happen. At the same time, any such illegal actions or pronouncements which are given out by the members of the khap panchayat should be strictly dealt with the law. कोई भी ऐसी चीज होती है तो you deal strictly with the law, but at the same time you have to try and bring a slow attitudinal change amongst the members of khap panchayats with the help of religious leaders, with the help of community leaders, with the help of NGOs and the civil society organizations and so forth, right? So this is what again has to be mentioned. Again, most of the students happen to answer this question. The only problem which they faced was that what are the specific legal, judicial and the administrative steps which have been taken. Some of them could mention, some of them could not, and in a way that is going to make a difference of 1 or 2 marks in this question, right? So this is about question number 4. Yes.
Strengthening of PRI institutions and the Nyay panchayats, all this could be mentioned in the legislative.
Strengthening of
that's a legitimate institution.
Well, see, khap panchayats का ना थोड़ा सा अलग रोल है. So
क्योंकि वो जब मजबूत होगा तो ये I mean people will move to those institutions.
Well, I'm not really sure about it. I'll have to. I'm not. I can't give out a particular answer to that. Whether the strengthening of the Gram Nyayalayas, etc. So yes, there will be this delivery of justice which will start taking place in a more speedy manner, and you would provide more legitimate means or a legal and constitutional means of delivery of justice. But at the same time, khap panchayats are actually dealing with very different issues if you look at it. सोशल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ज़्यादा है देन लीगल इश्यूज या डिस्प्यूट्स वगैरह में ना ज़्यादा इतना डिस्प्यूट्स वगैरह नहीं इतना ज़्यादा देखता खा पंचायत जितना कि ये सोशल वो है. सो यू कुड राइट दैट But again, I think the domain of khap panchayats is significantly different in that sense from what the regular panchayats or the regular courts or the gram nyayalayas etc. do. But you could make a mention about that. It's a good point to make. But I'll have to maybe read a little bit more about it and then I can get back to you on that.
And sir,
Informal meeting is the khap panchayat is informal meetings like that. So what is that compared with the panchayat?
So no, what he no, not with the Panchayati Raj institution, with the Gram Nyayalayas. See, what he is trying to say is that at the end of the day, khap panchayats are also giving out their judicial pronouncements, right? So can it be said that if we have Gram Nyayalayas etc., then instead of approaching khap panchayats, people would start approaching Gram Nyayalayas, and then these institutions would become defunct in a way. Am I right? Again, as I said, there is no if and but to this particular thing. I'll have to read a little bit more about it and then I will get back to you. But I think prima facie it does not look like a totally flawed argument, but something which does not seem entirely convincing also, right? Yes.
So it's true. पहले institution reform we can do is we can absorb the नया panchayats these people.
Again, I mean, see, this is वो ना अभी ये prophetic हो गए हम.
Come up with something.
Okay, I mean, again, the thing is that what you're suggesting could be a solution, but I would not say that yes, this should happen or not, because my domain knowledge is restricted. One is that, and then another thing is that do not try to be very prophetic in the examination. ज़्यादा preachy मत होना. उसका रीज़न ये है, जो आपने कहीं न्यूज़ में या किसी एडिटोरियल में या किसी एक्सपर्ट का ओपिनियन या किसी रिपोर्ट से पढ़ा है तो ठीक है. जहाँ आप थोड़ा सा लाइन क्रॉस करोगे, you never know what could be the implication for you in the examination. So do not be very prophetic or preachy in the examination. What my suggestion would be.
So what are the actions taken by the legislature?
Okay, what are the actions taken by the legislature? मैं बताता हूँ आपको. ये देखो यहाँ पे लिखा है यार मेरे पास. Okay, so right. So there have been a large number of debates which have taken in the Indian Parliament as well as the state legislature about the importance of the panchayat of the khap panchayats, as well as some of the politicians have also advocated the abolition of the khap panchayats, but no concrete law as such has been passed to regulate or ban the khap panchayats. That is one thing. So in a way, it remains to be more or less a critique only of the legislature. As far as the executive is concerned, executive has given out from time to time various instructions to the local police as well as to the local thanas and to the district administration etc. to deal with such pronouncements which are given out by the khap panchayats. But again, most of these changes which have been suggested have been reactive in nature, and there has been nothing proactive which has been done by the respective state governments as far as the khap panchayats is concerned. And even though some accused of ordering honor killings have been caught, many roam free, right? So again, more or less it has been, see, as I said from the beginning only, even though there have been few steps which have been taken, most of it has been unsuccessful and it has not been able to curb the khap panchayats and the functioning of the khap panchayats. जहाँ तक Supreme Court की बात है, Supreme Court in 2011 had declared khap panchayats illegal after the cases of honor killings sanctified by khap panchayats, right? The Law Commission also prepared a draft bill that sought to punish assemblies like khap, right? So these are some of the things which can be mentioned.
So, but there was some recent judgment from Supreme Court that khap panchayat might continue, but they shouldn't work as an alternate.
Yeah, so again, I mean, Supreme Court has obviously changed its opinion and view on that and taken a milder view, and which again is the view of the government of the day also, and has been of all the governments, that you cannot wish away with the khap panchayats. It's not practically possible. You have to reform, you have to bring changes in them so that they can be amenable to the constitutional as well as the legal requirements, right? Okay, fine. Now let's move on to next question. This one is about the ordinance wala. So ये चीज़ मैं already discuss कर चुका हूँ detail में. I'll just give you a brief structure of this. So it says that resorting to ordinances is always raised. So again, khap panchayats वाला question जो था, most of the people have attempted, but मेरे को ऐसा लगता है कि इसमें marks कम आएंगे. उसका रीज़न ये है कि most of the people did not have any specific thing to write about executive, judiciary and legal, and in fact कुछ ज़्यादा है भी नहीं specific. Judicial आप थोड़ा बहुत लिख सकते हो, executive and legal बहुत ज़्यादा नहीं है, right? Fine. Now question number 5, resorting to ordinances is always raised concerns on violation of the spirit of the separation of power doctrine, while noting the rationales justifying the power to promulgate, analyze whether the decision of the Supreme Court on the issue has further facilitated to resorting to this power. Right. First of all, what are the rationales which are given by the governments for resorting to the ordinance power that you people can mention? Now, the second, उससे पहले सबसे पहले आपको ordinance making power क्या होता है लिखने की जरूरत नहीं है, बस इतना लिखने की जरूरत है कि ऑर्डिनेंस मेकिंग पावर किस तरीके से सेपरेशन ऑफ पावर्स की जो बेसिक एक डॉक्ट्रीन है मॉन्टेस्क्यू ने जो दी थी उसको वायलेट करती है. राइट. हाउ लेजिस्लेचर्स which is the, or say the parliament, which is the supreme law making authority in the country, is reduced to the sidelines, and it is the central government or the executive which is supposed to be implementing those laws, starts writing laws or starts creating laws, circumventing the entire procedure, and therefore there is no checks and balances which exist, there is no separation of powers which exists. This is what has to be written in the first part of the question. Then you move on to write about what are the rationales which are given by the government or the executive while promulgating an ordinance. You could write that, and then you have to also analyze whether the decision of the Supreme Court on the issue has further facilitated to resorting to this power. अब सुप्रीम कोर्ट के क्या क्या डिसीजंस रहे हैं पहले तो ये समझिए. डीसी वाधवा केस के अंदर सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने ये बोला दैट promulgation of ordinances as such is not an unconstitutional thing or a measure. It is something which is clearly mentioned in the constitution. Post that also a number of judicial pronouncements very clearly said that there is no need to repeal the ordinance making power. It is a power which has been given to the executive in order to deal with certain emergency situations, certain exigency situations by the constitution makers after a lot of thought, and they should remain there, right? Because it might happen that we go into a war or something happens and important legislation has to be enacted and the parliament is not in the session. The executive cannot wait for the parliament to come back, the parliament to discuss, debate, and then the law to get passed, because the entire legislative process in the parliament is a very slow process. So therefore there are these special powers which have been given to the executive and they should remain there. So this is one thing which has been told by Supreme Courts in all as a sum total of all its pronouncements. The other thing which it has said is that at the same time repromulgation of ordinances just to circumvent the legislature is unconstitutional, and any such action of the executive would be declared as null and void. But at the same time the Supreme Court said that repromulgation in itself is not a problem. ठीक है. Now और तीसरी चीज जो सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने बोली कि अगर कोई भी ऑर्डिनेंस प्रमलगेट की जाती है विद अ मैलिफाइड इंटेंशन, then it can be declared as null and void by the Supreme Court of India, right? So these are the three important observations, or this is the sum total of all the rulings or the pronouncements which have been given by the apex court in last 20-30 years, right? Now, has this actually led to increasing of the promulgation of ordinances or not is a question that we have to answer, right? One, if you look at the statistical evidence, the number of ordinances which have been promulgated have continuously gone down in last 20 years. It's to a large extent attributed to the decision of the Supreme Court, where it said that repromulgation of ordinances will not be looked at very kindly in the DC Vadhava case. And the second thing is that it also said that any promulgation of ordinance which has a malified intention or no clear objective and statement can also be declared null and void by the Supreme Court. So because of this, to a large extent the number of ordinances have gone down. If you look at statistical evidence is available, आप PRS की website खोलो, उसके ऊपर पूरा statistics दिए हुए हैं किस तरीके से number of ordinances have actually gone down significantly in last 20 years, right? But there is counter view to this. People say that even though the number of ordinances might have gone down or whatever might have happened, the number of ordinances for important legislations have actually gone up. The examples being the recent food security के लिए, ठीक है, लैंड एक्विजिशन, कोल ऑक्शन, कोल माइनिंग के लिए ऑर्डिनेंस पास किया गया, क्रिमिनल अमेंडमेंट लॉ आफ्टर द निर्भया केस. So all of these were very important laws which had an impact on not only the central government but even the state government, and these laws have been introduced through the ordinance route. And there, for example, in the Food Security Act, the parliament was supposed to reassemble within 3 weeks, but the government went ahead and introduced the ordinance. This was a question which was asked, that what was such a need? 3 हफ्ते में अगर पार्लियामेंट मिल ही रही थी तो लेट यू कुड हैव अलाउड देम टू डिस्कस एंड डिबेट द बिल एंड देन इट कुड हैव सीन द एंड और द लाइट ऑफ द डे. बट व्हाट यू ट्राइड टू डू वाज दैट यू purposefully circumvented the parliamentary procedure and introduced the ordinance just 3 weeks before the reassembly of the parliament. This happened in 2014, right? 13, sorry, yeah, sorry. So this is another argument which is put forward. Now what opinion you take or not depends upon where you forcefully present your arguments. My personal opinion on this is that it is actually, I mean, it would be wrong to say that Supreme Court judgment has actually led to the increasing of the promulgation of the ordinances. In fact, it has only led down to the lesser number of ordinances being promulgated, right? Now the next part or the last part of the question is, should it be repealed or not? Should it be repealed or not? There are arguments in favor of and arguments in against. Arguments in favor of, there are parliamentary log jams, the entire monsoon session was a washout, even the winter session to a large extent was a washout, no important legislations were introduced. In fact, the last Lok Sabha was the one which introduced the least number of legislations were passed in the last Lok Sabha as compared to all the other Lok Sabhas in the history of the country, right? So that is one thing. Then on top of that, there is the government is not enjoying majority. There are large number of infrastructure projects. There are large number of laws which have to be passed in order to ensure proper development, economic development, social development of the country, and they have been stalled in the parliament because of the non-functioning of the parliament and so on and so forth. The parliamentary procedure in itself is a very painful process. It's a very slow process and so on and so forth. पहले पार्लियामेंट में इंट्रोड्यूस होता है, फिर सपोज लोकसभा में हुआ, फिर राज्यसभा में होगा, डिसएग्रीमेंट हुआ तो कुछ जॉइंट सेशन बुलाया जाएगा या सेलेक्ट कमेटी के पास जाएगा या स्टैंडिंग कमेटी के पास जाएगा, देन स्टैंडिंग कमेटी सेलेक्ट कमेटी के पास जाएगा, फिर वापस गवर्नमेंट पार्लियामेंट में आएगा, पार्लियामेंट में डिस्कस होगा, हो सकता है फिर वापस कहीं और भेज दिया जाए. सो इट्स अ वेरी स्लो एंड अ लॉन्ग प्रोसेस and it could lead to lapsing of a number of bills and important legislations and could delay the entire developmental process of the country. So this is what has to be mentioned in as far as the arguments in favor of. Arguments against are very simple. First of all, this is against the ethos of a parliamentary democracy, right? How can you circumvent the entire procedure of giving the parliament the right to discuss or debate a bill? Plus जब आपका ऑर्डिनेंस रूट के थ्रू आता है तो कोई डिस्कशन नहीं होता, कोई डिबेट नहीं होता, citizens do not become an active participant in the law making process. There are no debates. Because of that, you cannot even give a representation to all the sections of the society as far as a particular bill or a particular provision is concerned, and so on and so forth. So there are large number of negatives also. All this was has already been discussed numerous times with you before. Not only did I discuss it in the advanced batch, but this has also been discussed in the test series. Test series where there was a very similar question, that has the time come to relook at the ordinance making power and so on and so forth. So that is there, right? Now should it be repealed or not? Well, again, if you look at it, Supreme Court, the government, the expert bodies, all of them have said that it should not be repealed. It is a power which should be there in the hands of the government. But at the same time, it is the responsibility of the government as well as the opposition to ensure the proper functioning of the parliament, to ensure that the government does not have to resort to the ordinance making power, right? There has to be a balance which has to be struck between the obstructionist tendencies and the protest by the opposition parties or whatever, and the need for passing legislations in the country. So this is one answer which you could give. Plus, apart from that, you could also talk about that how it could be repealed, but I personally would not suggest that, because this is a provision which has been upheld by the apex court and so on and so forth. So I would suggest that you stick around with that same line.
I hope there is no state government angle.
State, oh well, state government angle is also there. Obviously, re-promulgation of ordinances majorly तो बिहार में ही हुआ था, right? तो हाँ, so अच्छा ordinances by नहीं यार governor is not doing it on his own ना, he is doing at the by the state नहीं not the center, state executive के उस पे ही कर रहा है वो भाई. Governor in 90% of the cases is not acting as per his discretion, it's the council of ministers at the state executive, राइट. सो वो मत सोचो कि भाई मतलब गवर्नर अपने आप से प्रोमलगेट करने लग गया ऑर्डिनेंस, वो नहीं होगा कभी, ठीक है. वो ही हैज टू डू इट ऑन द एडवाइस ऑफ द काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स, राइट. ओके, नाउ लेट्स मूव ऑन टू क्वेश्चन नंबर 6 क्विकली. वी हैव टेकन अ लॉट ऑफ टाइम. दिस वन, यस, सॉरी नहीं, अरे भाई ये क्वेश्चन इसलिए है, ये तो एक्सपेक्टेड था, ये मतलब इसलिए है क्योंकि पिछली गवर्नमेंट ने ऑर्डिनेंस के थ्रू इतनी इंपॉर्टेंट लॉज पास की और ऊपर से इन्होंने लैंड एक्विजिशन एक्ट और कोल माइन बिल और ये और वो सब किया, तो उसके उसमें वो कोई स्टेट गवर्नमेंट का एंगल कुछ नहीं है, ठीक है. दिस वाज वेरी एक्सपेक्टेड क्वेश्चन. इन एज आई सेड, ये तो टेस्ट सीरीज में एज इट इज मतलब टॉपिक पूरा कवर्ड था, राइट. नो, व्हाट आर द मेजर चेंजेस दैट हैव बीन ब्रॉट इन द आर्बिट्रेशन एंड द काउंसिलिएशन एक्ट ऑफ 1966 through the recent ordinance which has been promulgated by the president. लो ये एक और आ गया promulgation of ordinance. How far will it improve India's dispute redressal mechanism? Discuss. Now this is a question which has been left by 90% of the जनता in the examination for a very simple reason, that this required a lot of factual information. Second thing, कहीं पे भी current affairs notes उठा लो किसी के भी, उसके अंदर आपको ये मिलेगा नहीं. ये यहाँ से रहा है that there is a bill which is pending, right? अब इट्स अ वेरी डिफिकल्ट थिंग टू बी एंटिसिपेटिंग कि अब यूपीएससी इस पे भी पूछ लेगी, राइट. एंड दीज आर द काइंड ऑफ थिंग्स व्हिच यूपीएससी यूज्ड टू डू pre 2012, but somehow they have done something like this year also, and which is a little surprising, but in any case, so I'm not going into the any of the discussion of this bill. Major thing is that this question talks about what are the changes which have been brought about by the Arbitration and the Conciliation Act of 1966. If you want to go through the provisions, check up on the PRS website. You will be able to get access to the bill and what are the major provisions, and the analysis भी थोड़ा सा bill का दिया हुआ है. And then how far will it improve India's dispute redressal mechanism? Again, वो statement of एक ना objectives and resolution of एक हर law होता है, तो जब आप इस law को भी खोलोगे, इस bill को खोलोगे, तो उसमें भी objectives दिए हुए हैं, तो वही objectives ये जो है अचीव करने की कोशिश कर रहा है, वहीं आपको मेंशन करना है. मेरा ऐसा मानना है कि ये दिस क्वेश्चन वाज सॉर्ट ऑफ अ मिस्चिफ फ्रॉम यूपीएससी. दे ऑलवेज डू दिस काइंड ऑफ थिंग. इस तरह के 2-3 क्वेश्चन रहेंगे और कोई पॉइंट नहीं है. अब इन अ वे आपका जो पेपर है वो 20 क्वेश्चन से कम होकर 19 क्वेश्चन हो गया है, राइट. इज व्हाट आई मीन. 99% स्टूडेंट्स वुड नॉट हैव अटेम्प्टेड दिस क्वेश्चन. दे वुड नॉट हैव नोन where this question is coming from, and the ones those who would have attempted it would have written general stories which is not going to fetch anyways anything more than half a mark. वो बहुत श्योर है, मतलब यूपीएससी फालतू कहानी लिखने के नहीं मार्क्स देगा, ये तो पक्का है, राइट. आई मीन अदरवाइज एवरीवन कैन राइट, एवरीवन इज सो नॉलेजेबल, एवरीवन कैन राइट दैट मच, ठीक है. ओके, नाउ नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन इज अबाउट द राइट टू क्लीन एनवायरनमेंट and the bursting of the crackers. This was an item which was in news, but again this was unexpected somehow. No one expected that UPSC would ask such a question, but they have developed this habit of asking a lot of do you agree, do you think, and you know, all these kind of questions. So it says that does the right to clean environment entail regulation of burning crackers during Diwali, and discuss in light of the article 21 of the constitution and the judgments of the apex court in this regard, right. So this is also one thing. Supreme Court and basically the UPSC has some sort of very close bond or relationship with the apex court of the country. Last year also they happened to ask, I think, a couple of questions on the apex court, especially वो तुम्हारा कौन सा था वो judicial delays etc. of hanging वगैरह में, mercy killing petitions में. इस साल भी 2 questions पूछ ही लिया है, and this will continue, right. So now the question is that does the right to clean environment entail legal regulation on burning crackers during Diwali? First of all, start with talking about Article 21 of the Constitution and how Article 21 of the Constitution also includes your right to a safe, free environment and also a healthy life, right? And that entails that no one else has the right to dirty the environment or cause pollution and so on and so forth, which affects your health. You could cite several instances that how it has been noted in recent past in cities like Delhi, where the pollution levels have gone beyond emergency levels, and in some countries like Beijing or in some cities of the world like Beijing, etc., where emergency has been declared, India still remains to remain reactive and inactive to a large extent on these issues such as pollution, right? This has been causing a lot of disorders and so on and so forth and all these things, right? So this is a very basic part of the fundamental right which has been given to the citizens of the country. Not only that, also related to DPSPs, also related to fundamental duties. DPSP या fundamental duty में क्या होता है? It is the responsibility of each and every citizen to ensure a free, healthy environment, whatever, right? उसके अलावा हमारी cultural heritage, हमारे जो वाइल्ड लाइफ है उसकी प्रोटेक्शन, all of this has been enshrined in the constitution. The animals get affected badly when the crackers are burst, right? Whether it is the birds, it has been noticed that migratory birds, large number of birds, animals such as dogs, etc., face a lot of distress because of this, right? So this is what has to be mentioned. Then it says that does it also entail regulation on burning crackers during this thing, and what have been the apex court's judgment? So recently the apex court came out with a very clear thing that the burning or bursting of crackers as such is not illegal, but at the same time there have been several pronouncements given out by the apex court in the recent past which have regulated the sale and the use of crackers, right? What are they? You could talk about legal measures. Environmental Protection Act 1986 clearly talks about that this is the amount of sound which can be put out by a cracker, that has to be regulated. इतने decibel के ऊपर नहीं जा सकता है, right? Then the amount of pollution which is caused, the amount of fumes which are caused and all that also have been regulated. What materials are being used in these crackers has also been regulated under the Environmental Protection Act as well as under various other laws. Apart from that, the Supreme Court has already given out a ruling way back in 2005, I think, about that how the crackers cannot be burst after 10 PM, right? They cannot be burst in and around the areas where hospitals are there, public schools are there, community centers are there. These are areas where the crackers cannot be burst, right? Old age homes. So there is a regulation which has been put forward by the Supreme Court in the past through various pronouncements from time to time. So therefore some people whom I talked to, they said कि नहीं Supreme Court ने तो बोल दिया भाई कि क्रैकर्स बर्स्ट करने में कोई परेशानी, भाई क्रैकर्स बर्स्ट करने में कोई परेशानी नहीं है, but the thing is that there is a regulation. Plus you have to also give another side of the view that what are the arguments put forward by the people, those who burst crackers. They say that this is a part of our religion and culture and Article 25 of the Constitution. So Supreme Court has very clearly said, and even there are a lot of expert bodies, etc., which have said that nowhere is it mentioned that bursting crackers is a part of the Diwali is a, this was mentioned by Supreme Court, Diwali is a festival of lights and not of sounds, right? Not of crackers and not of noise. So maintain it as a festival of lights, and therefore nothing in the Constitution under Article 25 allows you to take away the right which has been given under Article 21 to the citizens of this country for enjoying a free, healthy life and access to a free, healthy, pollution-free, clean environment, right? So this is what has to be mentioned. And then उसके अलावा क्या है इसमें discuss in light of, yeah, so this is what has to be done. So try and इस तरीके के क्वेश्चन में ना जितना हो सके कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के और पर्सपेक्टिव्स भी लाने की कोशिश कीजिएगा. एज आई सेड फंडामेंटल ड्यूटीज, डायरेक्टिव स्टेट्स, डीपीएसपीज भी आएगा इसके अंदर कहीं ना कहीं, एंड ट्राई एंड रिलेट ऑल दीज थिंग्स एंड यू विल बी एबल टू वीव अ गुड आंसर. इस क्वेश्चन में सबसे ज़्यादा प्रॉब्लम ये रहेगी कि क्वेश्चन के जो पार्ट्स हैं वो इस तरह से पूछे गए हैं कि अगर आप इस तरीके से क्वेश्चन को आंसर करने की कोशिश करोगे, you will not be able to build a structure. So therefore, start from Article 21, move towards bursting of crackers and how they violate Article 21, and then also talk about the arguments which are put forward by the people, those who propose bursting of crackers or those who are in support of bursting of crackers, and then counter that argument again with Article 21, and then finally take it to what are the various pronouncements which have been given by the Supreme Court of India. If you adopt this structure, it will be more logical and it will have a more coherent flow rather than taking an ad hoc approach as the question wali approach agar aap rakhoge to. Yes.
Bursting of crackers in support, is there any constitutional provision which we can cite?
No constitutional provision. I mean, क्या constitutional provision? अब Article 25 ही लोग cite करते हैं कि भाई right to religion and this is a part of our culture. सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने वो बोल दिया कि वो तो नहीं है, फ्रीडम ऑफ एक्सप्रेशन है, पटाखे नहीं नहीं मेरे को नहीं है यार. आई मीन ओके, सो आप ऐसे कह रहे हो कि खुशी होती है तो मैं बम पटाखे फोड़ता हूँ, ठीक है मतलब, बट आई मीन आई थिंक दैट्स नॉट एन इंटरप्रिटेशन विच हैज बीन टेकन बाय द सुप्रीम कोर्ट, and obviously I will not dare to take that, right? Okay, now let's talk about question number 8 quickly. This one is about the changes which have been brought about in the FCRA. This was all over the current affairs material. अगर आप हमारा उठाओगे और बहुत सारा कहीं पे भी उठाओगे न्यूज़पेपर्स वगैरह में, ये था FCRA की गाइडलाइंस के अंदर चेंज लाया गया. एंड इन अ वे NGOs, FCRA, सेल्फ हेल्प ग्रुप्स, ये वो बहुत ज़्यादा एक्सपेक्टेड हमेशा रहता ही है टॉपिक. Otherwise also this year it was very much in news because of the banning of the Greenpeace, and there were a large number of NGOs which had been declared illegal, and they had been banned in India by after the report of IB, इंटेलिजेंस ब्यूरो की जो रिपोर्ट आई उसके बाद मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ होम अफेयर्स ने बहुत सारी NGOs के FCRA अकाउंट्स बंद कर दिए, और सिर्फ FCRA अकाउंट और FCRA लाइसेंसेज नहीं बंद किए, बट दे ऑल्सो बैंड अ लॉट ऑफ NGOs इन द कंट्री, राइट? So now it says that examine critically the recent changes in the rules governing foreign funding of the NGOs under the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act 1976. So basically this is an act which governs or which regulates the foreign funding of the NGOs, any of the political parties and so on and so forth, civil servants वगैरह के जो on amount or the money which they can receive from foreign countries, right? Now there are recently some changes which have been made into this. Some of them have been well received by the civil society organizations, some of them not so, right? What are they? First one, what they have done is that every NGO has to put its annual report online with a detailed this thing of where it has received its money from and where it has expenses been and so on and so forth on the website. This has to be mandatorily done by all the NGOs. This is one thing. Second thing is that they have to maintain 2 separate accounts. One will be for the FCRA and one will be for the other things. So जो भी FCRA से पैसा आएगा वो उसके अंदर FCRA अकाउंट में आएगा, and जो दूसरे में आएगा वो दूसरे में आएगा, right? Then on top of that they have also made changes like in case any money is transferred into the FCRA accounts of the NGOs, the banks have to report it within a stipulated time of 48 hours. So banks have to report it within the stipulated time of 48 hours to the authorities about that this particular money has been received. Then there are a number of other changes. Online filing of FCRA accounts कर दिया गया है for making it easy for the NGOs. So in case if they have received any money, then they can online clearances and certificates and so on and so forth. So there are certain forward looking steps also, right? Now then apart from that it says that the condition of submission of certificate from the chartered accountant and the audited statements of the account with the annual return is removed in respect of associations who do not receive or utilize foreign contribution in a financial year. अगर किसी भी organization ने foreign contribution नहीं receive किया है, last year किया था, इस साल नहीं किया है, then that they have to get a certificate from the chartered accountant and the audited statements of the account and have to give it with the annual return has been done away with, right? So these are some of the changes which have been brought about. Now the question says that examine critically, right? Examine critically means कि कुछ positives हैं, right? This entire procedure has been made a little simple. Last वाला provision जो है online करने का, transparency आएगी इससे. There has been a lot of distrust which has been existing between the state बड़े वाला state, between the state and between the NGOs. That trust gap can be bridged through these transparency activities Also, it has been noticed, as was mentioned in the IB report, that more than half of the NGOs in the IB report did not file their annual returns, right? Or they did not have clear accounts or transparency practices. So once these FCRA guidelines kick in, once these things kick in, it will make the entire process little more transparent, ensure effective accountability, and also ensure that the genuine NGOs, the ones those who are actually working in the interest of the development of the country, would not suffer, and the ones those who are working on malified intentions would then be properly dealt with the law. So these are some of the positives. There are certain negatives also. Like अब वेबसाइट मेंटेन करने बोल दिया आपने NGOs को. बहुत सारी NGOs लोकल लेवल के ऊपर काम करती हैं, उनको फॉरेन फंडिंग मिलती है. So and they do not have adequate workforce. Most of the NGOs do not have adequate workforce, technical expertise, etc. It is going to be a big nuisance for them to be doing all this, right? Also, it's been suggested by some quarters. This is the way you can simply write in your answer also, that it has been suggested by some quarters that these are nothing but guidelines which are to clamp down on the working of the NGOs in the country, which are specifically against the agenda of the government. The case in point being the banning of Greenpeace in India, right? So that is also one of the apprehensions which has been expressed by civil society organization members, where they say that these kind of steps are regressive in nature and trying to clamp down on legitimate activities of the NGOs, simply because the NGOs do not agree with the methods and the opinions and the views of the government of the day. Okay. So this is what has to be mentioned, and then finally you could take again a balanced stand. You could say that these, yes, there is nothing about blatant. As I said, you are not saying that this is what has happened. You are saying that certain quarters have. So as I said, tone it down by saying that certain quarters or certain critiques also suggest that this is just a method to clamp down on the NGOs. Right? And this is there. I mean, if you pick up the Hindu newspaper, you will find hundreds of articles on how the government is trying to, this thing. So again, it's the way you write it, the tone which you give it to it, right? And UPSC is not expecting you to be, parrots, those who will just आप critically examine लिखा है तो आप लिखोगे, critical perspective से भी लिखोगे आप उसको, right? Yes.
So the example which you quoted first, I mean that वो छोटे the small NGOs won't have the capacity or the technology to implement. So Home Ministry has said we will provide.
Okay.
So we will do hand holding. And on the second point, Greenpeace, that has been validated by the High Court of Madras. So we cannot say quote Greenpeace.
See again, I'll tell you one more thing. So मैं ना हमेशा पहले भी जब भी ऐसे topics पे discussion हुआ है, the point is not that what I am saying as an argument is perfectly valid. भाई आपने जो argument दिया उसके भी counter argument होगा. You get my point? So here this is an academic exercise. You have to express it in the, आपको ना एकदम पूरा रिसर्च पेपर नहीं लिखना कि भाई मतलब यही फाइनल व्यू है. देयर इज नो फाइनल अथॉरिटेटिव व्यू एनीवेज. सो देयर विल ऑलवेज बी काउंटर आर्ग्यूमेंट्स टू काउंटर आर्ग्यूमेंट्स, right? But you have to stop at some point of time. So what I am saying is that this is just an academic exercise where you write the pros and the cons and be done away with it. So if you feel that nahi ye concerns, so what you could do in that case is you could say that some of the concerns which have been expressed are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then you could finally writing your conclusion, you could say, but at the same time some of these concerns such as the maintenance of the website or the Greenpeace or so on and so forth have also been addressed by the government from time to time in its this thing. तो आप उस तरीके से एक पॉजिटिव तरीका भी हो गया, एग्जामिनर को भी ये पता चल गया कि आपको पॉजिटिव भी पता है, नेगेटिव भी पता है, एंड ये भी पता है कि नेगेटिव इज नॉट सो नेगेटिव कि it's going to totally destroy everything. So it will be a very constructive criticism which you will be writing, right? So you could always do that, but at the same time do not go too much into this कि यार अच्छा ये argument है फिर इसका ये counter argument, अच्छा इसका भी counter argument ये है, then that will destroy the entire purpose of the exercise. ठीक है? Okay. Now let's move on to question number 9 now, and let's we have already taken like 2 hours. So the self-help group bank linkage program, which is India's own innovation, has proved to be one of the most effective poverty alleviation and women empowerment programs elucidate. So basically क्या होता है, जो self-help groups आप सबको पता है? Anyone who does not know what self-help group is? Okay. See, self-help groups have been linked with the banks in the country. They help them in 2 ways. One, self-help group की जो भी saving होती है, they can put them in the bank and they can get assured return on that, right? One is that. Second is that they can also get credit, access to credit from these banks, because the access to credit which is available to the self-help groups otherwise from the macro financial institutions such as say the SKS microfinance and so on and so forth, or from the money lenders, is at very high interest rates, at times even 24 to 25%, whereas these banks provide them interest, these loans at very special interest rates, in fact even subsidized interest rates, because the government is subsidizing them, or there is certain interest subvention which has taken place, right? So now the question says that it has proved to be one of the most effective poverty alleviation and women empowerment programs elucidate. बहुत ही simple question है. अगर आपने self help group पढ़ा है ना, अगर आप self help group के advantages भी लिख दोगे इसके अंदर, तो वो more or less ठीक बैठ जाएगा इसके अंदर, more or less, right? किस तरीके से? It will first of all help generate more credit for various entrepreneurial activities of the females. It will create empowerment amongst them, because they would be the ones who will be taking control of their family, and they would be the ones, those who would be the earning members of the family, and thus help them improve their self-image, right? It would also lead to better management of finances in the houses, because it has been traditionally seen that women tend to spend more on the needs of the house and in a much more efficient way than the men. So they have the controlling power, they have the money in their hands, right? Then at the same time you could also be mentioning about how the empowerment of women is, this has also led to the improvement in the developmental indicators, educational development, also skill training, skill based training, as well as management expertise has also been provided. Banks जो है सिर्फ पैसा ही नहीं दे रहे, banks are also providing some sort of management expertise from time to time, because they are investing their money into these self-help groups, right? They are also providing them certain assistance by getting them access to skills and to skill training, etc. So all these things could be mentioned in your answer. A very simple one, again as I said, अगर आप सिर्फ self-help groups की advantages भी जानते हैं, आपको बस थोड़ा सा उसको relate करना है banks के साथ, कि किस तरह से banks जो हैं access to credit देते हैं, help in augmentation of the incomes of the females, help in augmentation of their savings, help in improvement of the overall levels of development. Poverty alleviation obviously happens because there are savings so in order to deal with any medical emergencies, etc., they need not mortgage or put their collateral in front of the money lender, etc. So all these things could be mentioned in your answer. A very very simple question. अगर आपने सेल्फ हेल्प ग्रुप पढ़ा है तो आप ये बहुत आसानी से क्वेश्चन को कर सकते हो, ठीक है. Now let's move on to the 10th question. This one is about again NGOs आ गया. So this one says that how can the role of NGOs be strengthened in India for development works relating to the protection of the environment? Discuss throwing light on major constraints. How can the role of NGOs be strengthened in India? So अच्छा ये ना एक तो in India for development works related to protection of environment. सबसे पहले तो ना एक तो ये है that try and begin with what are the various important roles which are played, or what is the crucial role which is played by the NGOs in the protection of environment in India, right? You can cite specific instances or names also. You could also talk about how they act as facilitators for the government. They act as a feedback loop for the government from the citizens to the government. They also help in ensuring that the interests and the concerns of the most downtrodden sections of the society are taken into consideration while any environmental project or while any developmental project is being taken up. Any environmental concern should be there. Biopiracy के केस के अंदर बहुत सारी NGOs ने बहुत अच्छा काम किया है, where there have been I hope you all understand biopiracy, right? Traditional knowledge of the indigenous people being taken away and being exploited and being patented. A lot of NGOs have filed cases against that, and they have successfully fought them in the courts and been able to win for the rights of the downtrodden and for the indigenous people, right? There have been several instances where NGOs have also acted as very effective tools to counter poaching. The Great Himalayan National Park, right down south in Periyar, a lot of NGOs have actually helped in curbing down poaching, because with the help of the community, they have built awareness, consensus among the community, and therefore they've been able to curb down on poaching. They have been able to bring the concerns of people into the eyes of the government and so on and so forth. तो बहुत सारी जो चीज़ें अभी मैंने mention किया. So how can their role be strengthened, and what are the major constraints which are there? What are the major constraints? What are the major constraints in the working of the environmental NGOs or NGOs working for the development of the environment?
Sometimes government itself stand against the NGOs.
So okay, so funds, the trust deficit, and the clashing of the views and the opinions with the government.
Manpower is less.
Manpower is less.
And they are not being getting salaries.
Funding हो गया. Okay, what else? Technical expertise is lacking in these NGOs, right? A lot of times they are only called as jhola chaps, do not have understanding of the administrative issues.
From ground.
Reluctance from ground, because there is again a trust deficit which exists between the people and between the NGOs also, right? What else? Internal security concerns again. So there is a trust deficit which exists between the government and between the NGOs, which think that these NGOs are working counter to the interests of the government. What else? Okay, so there is no regulator, there is no regulatory environment in which they exist. There is no proper step which have been taken by the government to ensure funding and transparency and accountability, as well as proper functioning and providing them a platform to express their opinions and views and so on and so forth, right? So all these things could be mentioned as constraints, and then you have to talk about what needs to be done in order to strengthen them. You could talk about national voluntary policy जो थी 2007 की, एक क्वेश्चन भी था, राइट, टेस्ट सीरीज के अंदर. इफ यू पीपल वुड रिमेंबर, सम हूएवर यू अटेंडेड द टेस्ट सीरीज, उसके अंदर ही मैंने ये बोला था कि ये जो नेशनल वॉलंटरी पॉलिसी है, नेशनल वॉलंटरी सेक्टर पॉलिसी है 2007 का, इसके जो भी पॉइंट्स हैं उनको फॉर्डर पॉइंट्स लेकर जाना एंड एनजीओ के किसी भी क्वेश्चन के अंदर उठा के फेंक देना, एंड दैट इज व्हाट हैड टू बी डन. So what you could have done is that you could have talked about how government can act as an enabler for the NGOs. Funding provide की जा सकती है. Government could help them explore various avenues for funding through CSR route, etc. Government could provide them technical expertise. Government could call them on board for discussions, etc. There could be an entire environment which could be created. You could help the government bring all the NGOs on the same platform so that there could be exchange of ideas, right? So all these things which were there in the national policy on voluntary sector of 2007 had to be put into this, as far as how the role of the NGOs can be strengthened as far as protection of environment is concerned. So the way you begin the answer is first talk about the importance of the NGOs in the environment and the protection of the environment, then move on to talk about the constraints, and then finally go on to talk about the steps which should be taken to strengthen the role of the NGOs. Again, if you would have noticed, I have not followed what has been given as a structure in the question, simply because if I would have done that, my answer would have gone haywire left, right and center. Therefore, try and give at least 20-30 seconds before you start writing the answer. ऐसा नहीं कि सीधा एनजीओ के ऊपर क्वेश्चन आया तो लिखना शुरू कर दिया एनजीओ क्या होता है, या गवर्नर के ऊपर आया तो आर्टिकल 200, 201 या 71 या जो भी है उससे स्टार्ट किया. Give it half a minute, think about the structure and then structure the answer properly, right? This is from my end. Now I'll hand it over to Suraj sir.
Good afternoon all of you. So myself Suraj. So I'll be taking the rest of the 10 questions. We'll start with the IR part first, so that there will be at least some change, okay, with regard to Indian polity and governance, and then we'll get back to the rest of the questions. Okay, so if you see the IR part, this time if you see, it's not a very specific question they have asked, so that's a good thing for an aspirant, because even if you don't know the points, you can jot down something about IR. But it does not mean that if you are totally blank, beating around the bush will also not fetch you much of the marks. But still, there were only 4 questions. Don't know whether this pattern will continue. But again, that if you are writing general question very specifically, you can get an extra edge, because this is where you can make a difference to your answer. Okay. So let's start with the first straight away, because sir has already talked about much about the sources and how to go about the preparation. So we can straight away start with the question. Okay. So question number 17. This was increasing the interest of India in Africa has its pros and cons. Critically examine. Now this was, if you see that there was a India-Africa Forum Summit which was there, which was 3rd in the series. If you see, this is not a bilateral summit, or for that matter, it was not a regional, it is a continent with respect to a continent. So this was unique of its kind, if you see in comparison with the America and China. Only the America and China so far has the continental relationship. So in that regard, since this summit was also there, so this was on the expected line that some or the other way, the question will be asked with regard to the Africa. Now the question seems to be an easy as long as pros are concerned. In case of international relations, writing the cons is very difficult, because for each country we have some or the other positive relationship. Now if you go by the dictionary meaning of cons, it's a demerits, okay, or disadvantage. Now you can have the challenges and limitations, so you can liberally interpret as a challenges into the relationship of India-Africa, and likewise you have to write the answer. So first of all, like see, the question was straightforward, provided if you have many answers, many points with you, you can straight away write in a point format. Pros 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points, and cons 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points, provided that you have a very specific points with you. If you don't have the specific points with you, you can introduce this way, the way I have started. Like in fact, the introduction is required in a sense that when it is saying that increasing interest, it means that earlier there was no interest and there is a recent surge, okay, with regard to the having and growing of interest with respect to in Africa. This recent surge is, you can give in that introduction, because earlier it was known as a hopeless continent. Africa is called as hopeless continent, and now from hopeless continent to continent of hope, or hopeful continent. Why was this shift? Yes, why was this shift, sudden shift from hopeless continent to continent of hope? Yes, so there was a discovery of resources, oil and metalliferous and non-metalliferous minerals. So obviously international politics is driven by economics. In fact, in contemporary time, geoeconomics have taken or replaced the geostrategic or geopolitical significance. So economy will drive the international relations. So in that regard, in case of African continent, there have been recent discovery, oil discovery or mineral discovery, metalliferous and non-metalliferous. But the point with regard to Africa is they do not have the expertise for the exploration. They do not have capital for the exploration. They do not have human resource. Okay, so in this regard, they require an assistance for the external countries. Secondly, obviously external country will be interested from the economic point of view. So in this regard, you can introduce a para that how there was a, in general, growing interest with regard to the continent of Africa because of the discovery. Then you can write in relation with the India, the pros are this way. So pros are this way. So this is like if you see the India's foreign policy in contemporary times. Earlier it was there were more of ideological overtones in India's foreign policy. Like for example, it was principally guided by the NAM, non-alignment movement, anti-racism, anti-imperialism. But if you see post 1990, okay, there are realistic overtones in India's foreign policy. Now, what is this realistic overtones? That is a focus on the economy, focus on the energy sector. Okay, that is energy diversification. So, if you can write the points, but if you are writing more important points at the top, so obviously it is going to fetch more marks, because examiner will know that what is India's interest with regard to Africa. See, if you are writing cultural ties, people to people contact, etc., etc., they are also the points, but they are not the primarily points. They are the supplementary points. So they should come at the bottom while writing the answer. So at the top, always there has to be an economic relationship and energy contact. So in case of a hard power, say, So for example, so in case of a prose, so you may write that what are the interests. So the first and foremost is the energy interest. Okay, energy diplomacy or the strategic interest, energy point of view. So in case of energy, while writing, you can add the point that 70% of India's oil come from Middle East. But what we are witnessing today is a Syrian crisis. Okay, and in this regard, because there is a turmoil in Syria, so obviously we need some other markets from where we can bring the oil. Second is, you can say that India's double-digit growth, expanding economy. So otherwise too, there is a lot of demand, lot of requirement for the energy. And in this context, the diversification of energy basket is very important. So you can write that energy significance with regard to the Africa. You can also specifically mention, if you know, that the countries with whom we have a ties with regard to oil. Yes, can you name some of the countries? Yes, first is the Nigeria. Okay, you should not forget the Nigeria. Yes, Sudan, Ghana. Yes, Libya also, Cote d'Ivoire, Equatorial Guinea. So these are 4-5 countries. Again, if you are writing these specific names, examiner will come to know that you know the specificity. Otherwise, just writing the plain oil and minerals. Okay, so you can write oil, minerals, etc. Second is, or oil, यहाँ पे minerals नहीं आएगा. Principally it is oil. Second is, so this is the first importance. Second is trade and investment. So any kind of a relationship, there has to be an economic component, trade and investment component. Trade and investment component, you can here quote that is a metalliferous and non-metalliferous minerals. Also you can quote, it's not just about the trade, it's very important investment because it's a developing continent. So in developing continent, you will require development of infrastructure. In fact, oil exploration requires a lot of investment. So this is an area for investment. Okay, most of the times we think of India, that is through the FDI, we are bringing the investment in. But here is the place where we are giving the investment to the African continent. So here you can also write that is, it's almost a 770 billion approximately. The trade is there with regard to the African continent. And in case of an investment, there are certain problems also, but we are going to discuss in the cons. If you willing to write here, this investment is primarily private investment. Okay, so you can quote particularly the Airtel, okay, Tata Energy, then Godrej. These are the prominent investment which we see in case of African continent. So that's the economic component. Third is, you can mention about the political aspects or the political significance. Political significance, see, the thing is that you should know broadly India's foreign policy, that whenever there are poor countries, okay, with regard to that, India want an South-South cooperation, okay, in terms of, say, for example, there are certain issues with regard to international politics, like UNSC reform, okay, then WTO, climate change. Okay, so in general, if you see, these are the issues which are common to all the poor countries or developing countries. So this, you can say that political significance, South-South cooperation, but you should not forget to mention this specific one, because in case of United Nations Security Council reform, India is one of the claimant. In fact, there was a separate question on this, what are the impediments. So you can say that by forging an alliance, if you will ignore it completely, because see, the number of countries here are 54. So this is a significant chunk. We are going to see that in case of UNSC reform, you require 2/3 of countries, okay, consensus on that. So in this regard, 54 is a very big number. Most of the time, people criticize the line of credit has been extended to the African countries when we are start off here. But that's not the case, because unless and until you will not give the line of credit, how you are going to get their consensus with regard to the solidarity on South-South cooperation or UNSC reform. So you can mention that political significance. Then you can mention the strategic significance. Strategic significance. Strategic significance related with the defense, related with, particularly when you are saying about, you should not speak about always whenever there is a strategic significance or defense procurement. There is as such a no big defense procurement with regard to African continent. So what are the strategic significance here? There is a maritime security issue. Okay, maritime security, that has to be the first consideration here, because if you see Gulf of Aden, Gulf of Aqaba, okay, Barbe, Mandeb, so there is a sea piracy issue. So maritime security issue, you can elaborate on it. Also, there are issues regarding the Al-Qaeda in Maghreb region, okay, in case of Mali. So you can talk regarding that also. In fact, the Syrian crisis which we see, there is a European crisis which is related to it. It's not just from the Syria people are migrating, but it's also from the North Africa people are migrating. So you can talk regarding that. You can take it at a global level also. That is India want, that is a international convention of terrorism. Okay, that is a comprehensive convention on terrorism. So India requires support of, again, African countries. Are you understanding? So this is the hardcore points that you have to mention: energy, economy, polity, and strategic significance. Then you can come to the soft power issue, that is regarding the cultural ties, okay, people to people contact, or for that matter, you can mention it as a track to diplomacy. Okay, so track to diplomacy, you can say that these are the age-old contacts, and therefore it is significant to establish a contact with them. Overall, this is how the importance of African continent for the India. I hope the points are clear. Okay, so this is the part of the pros. Now the challenging point is the next part of the question. What are the cons? The cons are, as I have mentioned, as a demerit. So as such, you can have the challenges and the limitation in India-Africa relationship. Yes, can anybody tell me what are the cons? Yes, very good. In fact, that's the one of the most important one. Yes.
And sir, Africa has become as a playground for competing
Yes.
economies.
Huh.
China
Yes.
and China in particular. So they, and that's what their demands were, that China is imposing.
Yes. Yes.
Allegations of neocolonialism.
Neocolonialism. Okay. How does it become a challenge for the India? Neocolonialism of Africa. Yes. So if you want to earn, so obviously competitive interest, there will be a clash of interest. What else? There are 2 points which I got. One is the political instability, where you see that. So first is political instability. See, the thing is that the economy will not flourish unless and until there is a political stability or democracy. Okay, so when they are holding political problems at ground, so it's not a good ground for the investment. And in fact, if you made the investment, and sooner or later, if there is a civilian war that will erupt in Africa, which is now going on in different parts of the countries, so this will threaten your investment also. So from that regard, it is also important that on ground there has to be a political democracy. That's the first. Second is, yes, even if political democracy is there, not there, there is not just in India who is interested, but there is a global interest. That is what I have said, conversion from the hopeless continent to continent of hope. So it's not than India. India, in fact, is a late starter. Okay, so there is a competition with respect to particularly China, USA, and European Union. You can put it in a category. So this, you can say that there is a competitive interest. You can say that this is a new area of conflict for the Indochina. Again, the ongoing conflict, which is a border conflict, water crisis, these conflicts are there, and these conflicts again we see in the new places also. Are you understanding? So it will not be that easy to get the investment, trade, and minerals, etc., etc. China has made a huge advancement here. In fact, you can mention here economic performance also. China's trade has crossed 20 billion. Okay, so India is just 70, so it's just a 1/3 of it. Okay, and in case of investment, also the 70 billion is not coming to the Indian pocket. That is also has to be borne in mind, because most of the thing, it's Indian is a private driven investment. So, but in case of China, it is a government driven investment. So it is more of a, we are selling sort of a thing to the private players. So that's why what is required here is India should also, with the government investment, should have its more role to play there. Yes, what else?
So I have 2 points to make. One is the
Yes.
credibility of Indian promises.
Yes, very good. Huh.
That we promise we are not able to
Okay.
put that in action.
Okay.
And the second is, thing is that when we are trying to engage with Africa on a homogeneous basis
Yes.
on a continent basis,
Hmm.
there are some important players who are feeling that they are not being treated specially.
Okay. At parity with each other, or specially means what kind of speciality you are?
We are treating them at parity because we invited all the 54 countries from
Yes.
Africa,
Huh.
but there are certain important players like South Africa, Nigeria.
Okay, fine.
I think that they have a more important stake in the relationship.
Okay, fine. Yes, but there are both the pros and cons of that. In fact, there is a Benjil formula. Anybody knows what is a Benjil formula? There is a Benjil formula was earlier that only 15 head of the states are going to come and have a meeting with India. But from this year, where this India-Africa Forum Summit had concluded, we have done away with the Benjil formula, and now we are going to have an establishment of relationship with all the 54 on the parity scale. So there are good pros and cons of it. Pros I have mentioned, more number of countries you will engage. The other, that South-South cooperation, UNSC reforms, those will be there. But then few of the countries are feeling that they are not provided with the specific kind of attention that is required. Yes, apart from that, yes, but this thing has to be mentioned, that is the promises not only about the fund but also about the investment. That is a red tape and bureaucratic problem, which is a problem of India that has been exported also. So bahar bhi red tapeism, bureaucratic problems with regard to India's investment. If you see in case of US, China, European Union, they have dedicated task force there so as to get the clearances of the investment. But in India, it's just a memorandum of understanding most of the times, and there is a delay. There is again, we see that promises has not been readily be made available to them. So this is also questioning the credibility of India's investment also. Yes, what else?
Can we mention this security considered transparency?
Yes, you can mention that also. That is a problem of political instability. You can overall write regarding it. Okay, so this is more or less concerns. Yes?
Sir, on parity skill, what is meaning of it?
Parity means 54 countries you are calling. So for few of the countries which are rich countries, economically rich, they want a specific attention for them. So that is the meaning of parity. So yes, red time problem. Again, the another problem is there is an Indian diaspora, and whenever the Indian investment is there, there is no proper integration of Indian diaspora. So Indian diaspora can be used in the advantage of India's investment, India's trade. So that's also one of the point that has been highlighted many a times in India-Africa Forum Summit and also by the NRIs there. So that is an additional point, but again, that point should come in the end. I hope the points are clear. Okay, so that's the pros and cons. Challenges and limitation. We are not exploring it. Okay, we are leaving them aside. That is what we are doing is only the private investment, non-involvement of the people there. So this is a sort of a challenge. Yes, any other question? I think that's suffice the answer. That will suffice the answer. So we'll move next. Next question. Question number 18. Discuss the impediments of. Yes, one more point I'm remembering. There is a political that UNSC reform we were talking about. There is a consensus regarding UNSC reform by the Africa. That is, if you want to note, Enzulwin consensus. Okay. Enzulwin consensus. Enzulwin consensus says that earlier there was a very liberal support for the India for this India's candidature for the permanent membership. But now this consensus says that the status quo should be maintained. Okay. Now this was again, we see the growing Chinese clout in an African continent. Okay. So China has, there is also a term which is used that is called as checkbook diplomacy by the China. So China has invested so much of money, and they say that China is responsible for evolving this Enzulwin consensus from the African continent. As per this consensus, they do not want to make any changes in the current P5 structure, because again that will disturb the balance of power equation, and obviously the status quo will be beneficial for the China. So this is where we see that there is also a conflict. Also you can mention, although we are talking about South-South cooperation, but there are different small differences with regard to the climate change cooperation, etc., that we have seen in Paris summit also. So that's also you can mention. It's not that 54 countries are there and they are rallying behind the India, okay, tell me what you want, etc. Okay, so there are obviously the differences. So that differences also you can mention. Okay, so now next. That is the question regarding the United Nations Security Council reform. And see, the question is very specific in regard to, they were not talking why it is important, why reform has to be there, which is again a very popular question, but also what are the India's credentials, why India should get the UNSC permanent membership, that's also not was the question. The question was impediments. Okay, so if tomorrow United Nations Security Council reform going to happen, then what are the impediments for it, that India's candidature will be rejected, not rejected, etc. So this is a very specific question. So you can introduce, see this question was again a very unexpected lines, because you see in case of June and July, there was a draft which was in the United Nations General Assembly regarding initiating the discussion on the UNSC reforms. So obviously some or the other way the question was going to come, but again most of the people have prepared why reform was required and how India is one of the important candidature for the UNSC reform. What are the things that the India is doing from the international platform, like say for example G4, in order to make its candidature stronger. But the question was again impediments. So the question impediments can be divided. Yes, let me take some of the answers. Yes, what are the impediments on a broader scale? Consensus of P5. Okay, that's one. That's the most important one. G4 competition. How that will be an impediment? Is that a strength or is that an impediment? Yes, you have a point, but can you elaborate upon it?
Sir, it's both. Actually, impediment here it is because, if I take Brazil or if I take Germany,
Yes.
then Italy-led group is opposing Germany, and Argentina-led group is opposing Brazil.
Okay, fine.
Japan-led China.
Okay, that explanation will be more valid in case of coffee club. We'll come to that. Okay, what is a coffee club? Yes, it was actually the opposition, the G4.
Wise we are much
Yes, see, there are certain criterias, okay, on the basis of which you will be granted the UN security permanent membership. So obviously the criteria is what you have done with UN so far, not only in terms of ideological commitment, but also in terms of financial commitment. Now, if you see in case of Germany and Japan, they are I think at the rank number 2 and 3. In fact, more ahead than the P5 countries. Okay, China, France, the UK, Russia. Okay, only the US is ahead of them. But otherwise, the financial contribution is a very high, where we can see the Indian contribution is not that high. So that can be in one. Within the G4, I'm saying, because he has specifically talked about that. Second is, you have to think about the geographical representation. Now, if you see the geographical representation or the territorial representation, in case of Asia, when China has already been given the candidature, and if at all the second member from the Asia has to come, then there will be a competition between Japan and India. So obviously, Japan's credential in terms of financial assistance to the UN is very high. So they are going to be a problematic situation. So that's the one point. Okay, with regard to G4. What else? I hope you are following me. Are you following me? Okay. Yes. Yes, anything else? See, the thing is that you can first of all think of UNSC reform, how it can be brought. There are certain procedural challenges with regard to the procedure. How the UN reform can be done, that if you have to change the present structure, you require consensus of 2/3 of the members. Now, this 2/3 of members, not only into the UNGA, that is General Assembly, but also this 2/3 should ratify, okay, whatever the consensus that has been brought in on the UNGA in their respective countries. Now think of 2/3 is a very big chunk. Okay, if you take an 200 or say for example 195, so 2/3 of it is I think almost 127. Okay, whatever the count is. So that much of country should ratify also, and at the same time, they should also ratify in their domestic countries also. Along with that, this also should have the consensus of P5. Now this is a problem. So this is the joint procedure. Okay, that is 2/3 plus it has to be have a consensus of P5, and P5 will certainly have the veto power. Okay, so P5 will have the veto, or for that matter, here also for India, the troublesome factor would be going to be in China. So you can say that the India's unresolved border dispute with regard to China. Okay, so it can be problematic with regard to like holding the consensus. Okay, that is a uniting for a consensus with regard to the UNSC reform. Are you understanding? In fact, you can mention here also. So far, the China stand has not been clear yet. Okay, although the US and only the UK and the France has come publicly. US stand is very ambivalent. It is only a lip service. Okay, most of the time Barack Obama comes here, and then India is not an emerging country. India is an emerged country. Okay, we completely support. But who are going to initiate this process? It's the US. Okay, so it's just a lip service that we say. So stand is quite ambivalent, and particularly it is important because America always come through the back channels, and they talk about Jammu and Kashmir issue. They talk about human rights violations inside India. So these are the problems which are going to be problematic for India for the times to come. But this is a procedural part. Now come to another points where you see that there is a complete opposition. So first point you can mention is a coffee club.
Sir, in the procedural part also, what could be the future structure, potential structure of UNSC? That there is no consensus or there is no unanimity, I mean there is nothing on that. So that is, I mean, holding back everything.
Yes, I am going to come, not only just procedure, the other part, yes, I am going to come to that. There is a no consensus with regard to which criteria to be applied in order to make an filtration process. See, the point is, I'll come to that point, wait for a minute. So, first of all, let's talk about the coffee club. So, what is a coffee club? It is an informal club. In fact, if you see the G4 countries, so you have here the India, what are the other countries? Yes, Japan, Brazil, and Germany. Sometimes it is being talked as G4 plus. What is this plus? Yes, anyone? What is this plus? South Africa, yes. Some countries from the Africa, because if you see this reform only of G4, then Africa's representation will be still at 0, because this will give Asia or South Asia one representation. Brazil is Latin America will get representation. Germany has already toned down its stand. Okay, this is very important because Europe has been over-represented. So G4 में जितना enthusiasm पहले था, okay, last 2 years, that's we are not seeing because Germany has already toned down its stand. Okay, for some other reason. But let's talk about coffee club. So what is a coffee club? Coffee club is essentially against any kind of preference that is given to the G4 countries. Because you see, in case of India is going to get an UNSC, it is going to upset the Pakistan. Okay, so Pakistan is one of the important country there. So here, the coffee club member, Pakistan. So Germany would be there. So obviously, who is going to get upset? Italy. So here the Italy. Okay, Latin America, then Chile, and those countries. So those countries who are surrounding, there is a big club. It is not a small club. 34, 36 countries are there. So these countries are opposing any kind of the change into the current status, or they are principally opposing the G4 structure. Are you understanding? So that coffee club, and more the countries will join them, okay, the more it will be difficult because 2/3 number will be difficult to obtain. Yes, what else? Apart from that, yes, what else? What else you can think of? See, now let me come to that point. The consensus. See, there are two consensus. One is consensus required for the UNSC reform. That is overall understanding. See, if you see that in case of June and July, the draft has been initiated, it means that more or less the countries have agreed that reform is required. Okay, there is this is not a rocket science now, because 1945 structure which was prevalent in UNSC, which is redundant in contemporary times in 2015. So there is a lot of change that has happened in international politics. So reform is required. But there is a second consensus which is required, which is not able to evolve. The second consensus is what are the criteria that has to be applied in order to filter the mechanism. Now India want the criteria like democracy, okay, because it's a 1 billion population. So obviously if you are giving a representation to the India, so it is, you are giving a representation to 1/6 of the humanity, okay, 1/7 of the humanity. So that's a kind of the argument India would favor, okay. Democracy should be given more role. India's role in peacekeeping, okay, so peacekeeping effort should be given more role. Somebody who is giving more finances will be interested in finances should be given as a priority. Somebody else like Africa will be talking about territorial representation should be given as a criteria, because territorially we are 54 countries and we have not yet represented. At least Asia has been represented through the China. Are you understanding? So these are there is no evolving consensus or agreement on the criteria that has to be used, which can be used for the filtration mechanism for the G4 countries or for the permanent membership countries. Are you understanding? So that's one. And then you can see that specifically related with the problems of India, India's unresolved disputes with regard to China and Pakistan. Then you can say that India's problem with regard to Jammu and Kashmir and human rights violations. Then you can say that India's HDI ranking. Okay, you need to have a strong state also. Okay, so you have a malnutrition, poverty, etc., etc. So these are going to be also an consideration for the UNSC reform. One more important thing is, which is not been stated, but this is also de facto very important, that what stand do you take on the different international issues? Okay, and India's stand has not been that good, okay, in regard to India as a global leader or India as one of the important leader who was taking the stand. Say for example, कोई भी गल्फ में क्राइसिस है, मिडिल ईस्ट में क्राइसिस है, क्या इंडिया का रोल है? ऑपरेशन सुकून, बस एनआरआई को उठाओ, गाड़ी में डाल दो, ग्लोब मास्टर में डाल दो, यहाँ पे आ जाओ. That's it. So India is not principally talking about what the stand has to be taken. Okay, एक ही स्टैंड रहता है, inclusive democracy has to be there, establishment. So these are the things that we have seen. This the C. Raja Mohan talks about. Yes, anybody knows? This is a very famous term. Okay, sitting on the fence policy. Okay, that is a bystander. Okay, it is a swing state. There are 3-4 words. So I think at least you must be knowing C. Raja Mohan, realistic analyst. Most of the time he write in the Indian Express. Raja करके लिखते हैं. Okay. So in case of Rajya Sabha television also he comes. So he says that this is going to be troublesome because when in international politics so many issues are there. Like for example, in case of climate change also you drag your feet. Okay. In case of nuclear you do not sign the CTBT and PT. In case of this terrorism, ISIS, you remain silent till the time Pakistan will get involved. Yes, so these are the issues which will be looked into account, that how India is providing the leadership. I hope the points are clear. So impediments has to be very specific one with regard to this point. Okay, next question. Shall I move? The Project Mosam. The Project Mosam is considered as a unique foreign policy initiative of Indian government to improve the relationship with its neighbor. Does the project have strategic dimension? Discuss. See now, this Project Mosam, this is one of the very specific question. Okay, if you are clueless about Project Mosam, which many of my friends were who were writing, and they end up in writing everything that comes with the neighbors. Neighbors के लिए trade कर दो, soft power कर दो, track to diplomacy, etc., etc. Okay, that will not fetch you marks, because unless and until you know what is Project Mosam, it requires only one line. That is the cultural ties. Okay, so that was the most important part. In fact, there was this interpretation of the word itself, Mosam. So the project has been launched with regard to that terminology. What was this? Project Mosam? Yes, it is a monsoon. Mosam is a monsoon. It is an Arabic term. So it is a monsoon. So what was this project essentially? जो southwest monsoon है. Okay. So the southwest monsoon, the way it moves, there are countries in and littoral countries of Indian Ocean. So there are some of the eastern African countries. It is going to be an Indian continent, Indian subcontinent. So going to be in South Asian countries, and maybe in the eastern part there are certain countries like Indonesia, etc. Okay, so these are the, like, more or less, these are the countries of Indian Ocean Rim, ARC. What is this? Association for Regional. I hope you know this. Okay, this is an organization, Indian Ocean Rim Association for Regional Cooperation. So these are the littoral countries of Indian Ocean. So this project, now the question was very specific. They said that it is considered to be a unique foreign policy. What was so unique about it? Because this project does not have any hard elements. Hard element means hard power elements, such as we talk about economy, energy diplomacy, defense diplomacy. Okay, there is no defense, there is no economy, there is no energy security. These points have not been written on paper. Okay, let me come to the second part later on. This is basically the cultural ties. Now, this cultural ties has to be established between the India and all those countries which cover through the monsoon, that southwest monsoon. So it means that India is going to have a cultural ties with the East African countries or African continent, then some of the Middle East countries also, because they're where we see the monsoon goes, and then Asian continent and some of the East Asian nations. So this is, you have to write, this is a cultural specific ties with regard to neighboring countries, and not just the neighboring countries of Asia, but about the neighboring countries with regard to the Indian Ocean Rim or littoral states with regard to the Indian Ocean. Okay, so then you can elaborate what are the cultural types. In the age-old history, there was a Silk Route, and now we are going to revive those routes. We are going to go, there are two aspects. One is they call as a macro aspect, and second is they called as a micro aspect. Macro aspect is establishing the routes with them. So for example, sea routes, establishing a safe routes with the African nation, establishing safe routes with the Indonesia, etc., etc. That is the first component, that is a macro component. And micro component is once, yes? Counter the, no, that, see, the thing is that we will come to that part in strategic, okay? On stated policy we are talking about. What is a stated policy on document? On document, it has first is, that is a macro connection. And second is, once you have the connection, once you reach to the countries, understand the cultural aspects of particular country, and then try to establish people to people contact and more collaboration with them. It is more of a soft power diplomacy. What is unique about it is absolutely a soft power diplomacy of an India with regard to the Indian Ocean Rim. Now the question is very specific. Does the project has a strategic dimension? Now this is a catch where on paper it does not have, it is not talking about establishing the Malabar like naval exercises. It is not talking about defense procurement. It is not talking about piracy, etc., anything like that. But yes, it does have the strategic significance because it is India's answer to the China's maritime Silk Route. There is a growing presence, growing footprints of China into the Indian Ocean. And obviously you can say that the China's string of pearl policy, China's maritime Silk Route, and obviously the India project NOSAM is India's answer. In fact, maritime Silk Route is also essentially on paper it is a economic policy. Okay, what they are talking about Chinese, in fact that is the reason why India has not yet gone proactively signing and joining the maritime Silk Route, because there is yet no clarity whether it has a strategic components or not. But the international experts keep talking about it. This is a China's failed string of pearls. String of pearls में बहुत aggression लग रहा था. So now they have changed their name into the maritime Silk Route. So in the same way that you in international politics, you need not have to say everything explicitly, okay? But it does have the strategic component with regard to tackling the Chinese presence in Indian Ocean. So you can say that although on the paper it is not statement, but there is a very much strategic component to the project NOSAM. I hope the point is clear. That's it. Then you can keep on elaborating what are the cultural ties, track to diplomacy, people to people contact, what are the things regarding it.
Relation with cotton route project with this.
Pardon?
India point cotton route project, like Silk.
Yes, there are many. See the thing, in case of connectivity, there are some specific routes that has to be established. तो वो नाम्स है उसमें, ठीक है? Yes, next come. But if you are writing again general points like neighbor countries, Asia, trade, investment, energy, वो जो मतलब फार्मूले हैं हमारे, So that will not work. Okay, that will give a very wrong impression. Question 20. Question 20. Terrorist activities and mutual distrust has clouded the Indo-Pakistan relationship. To what extent the use of the soft power like sports and cultural exchange could help to generate the goodwill between the two countries? Discuss with suitable examples. This was the only country which has not been visited earlier, matlab the time there was an exam. Otherwise, question would have been rather different. Okay, and people also prepared all the visiting countries except Pakistan. But then the question was very interesting. They are again not focusing upon the hardcore elements. They say that there is a stalemate with regard to India-Pakistan relationship, and can this stalemate, to what extent it can be resolved through the soft power again, that is soft power. Specifically, they have given two things, that is a sports and cultural exchange. Okay, so first you can give a little bit of introduction with regard to, you must be knowing about this word, that is a composite dialogue process, which is a structured dialogue process in between India and Pakistan otherwise. So you can see that since 26/11, there has been no progress, or the composite dialogue process has been stalled. Okay, so there is no structural dialogue which is going on in between India and Pakistan since 26/11, okay, Mumbai terror attack. Now, in this atmosphere of pessimism, so you first introduce this, that this is the situation at this point of time. Then you can also quote that is there is what is called as a trust deficit that exists. Okay, trust deficit that exists, which has hijacked the India-Pakistan relationship, okay, for a time being. So you can see that whether this trust deficit or this can be plugged, this gap can be plugged by the sports and cultural. So having introduced this para, then you come to the utility of sports and culture and to what extent. Question also mentioned, give some specific examples. Okay, so let's come to the first, the sports part. So sports part, you can give one specific examples that if you remember, there was a IPL semi-final match, I think, 2011 it was there, where Dr. Manmohan Singh and this World Cup semi-final. Okay, World Cup semi-final was there. So in case of World Cup semi-final, both the Prime Minister from the two countries has sat together in spite of there was a yes. So you can say that that was a sort of a thaw, and we can also bring in such kind of sport diplomacy in between the two countries. You can also say that in recent time, in fact, that point has been ignored. The sport should not be looked. It is beyond the sports. Okay, say for example, Prime Minister when has just now signed an energy document, that is a nuclear document with Japan. If you have followed his word, he says that it is more than the energy deal. What does it mean? It is more than the energy deal means it has a strategic significance with regard to China also, and it has a significance with regard to overall relationship of the Japan and India. So it's not just an energy tie. So sports, if you are venturing and making and sports to happen in India, it's not just about the sports. It's about also the people-to-people contact. It's about also the mutual understanding. It's about diffusing the mutual mistrust between the two countries, that people can come and go. Forget about this. We are even questioning the umpires also. Okay, the umpire also has gone back. I think there was a, yes, in case of Mumbai, what is his name, umpire? Yes, there were so many rhetorics. Forget about that. So this is the cultural sports. You can give a specific example regarding the cricket. Second thing is, but again, cricket, it's like a war rather than the mutual contact. So the war that is being fought in the LOC is fought on the Wankhede Stadium. Okay, most of the times it happens. Second thing is, you can give the cultural ties. Cultural ties, you can talk about again the Bollywood exchange. Okay, you can also even again there is a negative thing. What is his name? Ghulam Ali. Okay, whose consent was cancelled. So you can say that there was a Bulle Shah earlier, okay, who used to come here. Sufi saint used to come here. So there was a cultural and mutual exchange which is required. So you can say that India and Pakistan can think about it in order to diffuse the mutual trust. So you can give specific examples regarding the cultural exchange program, Bollywood, you can say that collaboration, then directors should come and go, etc., etc. So these are the points you can say that. But you see that this cannot be a panacea for the India-Pakistan relationship, because it is reading too much between the soft power, because India and Pakistan is basically the relationship. There are two important things. One is the word K for the Pakistan and T for the India. Okay, unless and until some of the things has to be taken on that, it cannot supplement, it cannot substitute, it can only supplement. So you cannot forget this. Okay, that is a composite dialogue process. What is the T word? What I was referring to? Terrorism. Okay, so terrorism that is emanating from the Pakistan, that's the most important for the India, and India will always hammer that you are not serious about terrorism. So 26/11 perpetrators has to be brought to the book, etc. Those lines have now become a ABCD in India-Pakistan relationship. But Pakistan says that we are doing our dues and we ourselves are suffering from the terrorism. Every day there is a Taliban attacking on us, that is a civilian government. So we have to go beyond this terrorism, okay? And we have to talk regarding the economic ties, we have to talk regarding the cultural ties. For Pakistan, the most important issue is Kashmir. Unless and until you talk about the Kashmir, we are not going to move forward. But then we see that, again, secretly, there has been now the talk going on. So we can say that some black channel diplomacy or the diplomacy away from the media will bring some reason.
Different perspective be wrong, like the different perspective being like we can engage through people, and since we are two democratic countries, without the people we cannot have political.
Yes, you can mention that.
The limit is there.
That is what I was saying. There is a saturation point. Beyond a limit, you cannot stretch that thing unless and until you talk on the core issues. But the point is, at least they can bring the mutual understanding between the two countries in order to kickstart the composite dialogue process.
There army is also a limitation, we can write.
Yes, you can write that. Okay. Are you understanding? So this is basically the point. Also, you should not give, the moment the cricket will be there and cultural ties will be there, everything will get resolved. No, that is not going to happen. So core issues required to be resolved. But then there is a track to, in fact, there is a very interesting case, if people have studied international politics in length, there is a theory of functionalism. See, the thing is that countries like Germany and France, they have gone for the World War II, okay, facing each other. Now they are the most integrated on the planet, okay, that is through the European Union. So what is the theory of functionalism says? That you divide the issues into two parts, what is called as the high politics and the low politics. High politics is there are too much of confrontation. You cannot able to move on those issues, okay. And second is low politics, where there is a mutual consensus is possible, okay. So you take up first issues of low politics, you start having a mutual understanding on them, you form the agreements on them, and then there is what is they call as a spin-off effect. There will be a spin-off effect, and slowly then you can bring up the issues of high politics. So this is a theory of functionalism. Without writing functionalism, maybe examiner may not be knowing about it, but you can bring this part that economic contacts, cultural contacts, people to people contact, low political issues can be there. Such as, say, for example, Siachen, issue of Sir Creek. These are what is called as the doables in India-Pakistan relationship. Doables means it can happen. So we need to, in fact, the giving of this, what you can say, that most favored nation, okay, clause to the India, which they have been resolved so far. So these are the points you can talk about.
Sir, not as per this question, but
Yes.
how do you, what pragmatic solution you see on the Kashmir front in the near future?
Okay. What I see? Okay. See, the thing is that there is already, what I can tell is, there was already a made-up consensus which are there in between India and Pakistan. That is converting the LOC into the international boundary. It was being said that Dr. Manmohan Singh and Musharraf was about to exchange the draft. Draft was prepared. So India is quite happy with regard to accepting the line. Although we talk about POK, hamara hai, hame chahiye वगैरह, but India is still happy with the LOC part because Kashmir is with regard to an India. Okay, at least Kashmir India ke paas rahega. So that status quo can be made an international line, which is in line with the 1972 Shimla Agreement. In fact, in Shimla Agreement was talking about that bilateral relation में LOC जो है, that can be considered at international border. That is in favor of India. Although we feel that POK chala jayega, wo international politics mein, if you don't own the territory for 60 odd years, there is no mechanism. Sad to say, but you cannot go till Lahore and get your things, those rhetorics. That is one thing. Let me complete. So that's the one thing about the political boundaries. Second is any kind of the boundaries, you can say that people across the boundaries are more important. Let us make those boundaries where there is an army, make those boundaries irrelevant in a sense that make those boundaries as a soft boundaries rather than the hardcore boundaries. Like today what we have is the military from either of the side, and therefore people of that particular area are not able to have the fundamental rights or the human rights. So what is required is demilitarization of the zone, and then establishing the democracy, establishing the people to people contact across the borders. So that's the pragmatic solution. Interview में भी काफ़ी बार पूछते हैं ये, तो याद रखो. मतलब बहुत ज़्यादा rhetorics नहीं बोलना है कि मतलब पहले लगा था कि नया गवर्नमेंट आने के बाद लाहौर तक चले जाएंगे हम, तो थोड़ा सा इमोशनल, और कश्मीर इशू हमेशा इमोशनल रहा है इंडियंस के लिए. So that has to be a pragmatic solution.
First, you said that POK thing. Recently, Foreign Minister said in UN that first you give POK then. So
Yes. So do you say that? That's what I am saying. These are the rhetorics. So you have to like see the ground level situation also. Same in case of Aksai Chin also. Do you think that China is going to give the Aksai Chin to India now? India is in favor, that is whatever the line LAC is there, that has to be international line, and give your claim on the Arunachal Pradesh and Tawang. That is India's favor. Okay, so there are issues regarding it. Okay, we can discuss because we have many issues to complete. Okay, so let's come to the domestic affairs. Which question do you want so that we can take those as a priority? Because as the time will go by, the discussion, people will not be so interested. So if you are finding anything more important which I can discuss first, we can pick up that. Question number 15. Okay, Whistleblower Protection Act. Yes, this time let me make a comment regarding some of the aspects of the Indian paper or Indian polity paper. The point was that in each question they have given some current event, and then they have mentioned analyze your viewpoints on this specific event. So it's a very googly type of thing. If you do not know, say for example in this question amendment, even if you know what is whistleblowing, what is whistleblower protection, etc., etc., if you don't know what have been the amendments, then it will be very difficult for you to write the answer. So at least if you have flipped through the paper, if you are not knowing anything, at least one point was very common during all these days, that some sort of, they are talking about if the information is questioning the sovereignty, national security, territorial integrity, any kind of the national interest. So that sort of information, if you are going to leak the information, you will not get the protection. So if you had this at least one point, then you could have saved your question. But if you are not having any clue about even this point also, then obviously either you have to leave this or you have to scribble down something. So let's see what is a whistleblowing protection. Whistleblowers protection. And the question was framed in a very interesting manner, which it has passed few hints to the students also. The hints were in the form of amendment bill to the Whistleblower Act 2011 table in the Parliament. If it is passed, there may be no one left to protect. So you can get the clue that जो भी whistleblowing protection act होगा, उसको और कुछ ना कुछ dilute किया है, that people will not get the protection, and therefore if they will not get the protection, nobody will be there to blow the whistle. Are you understanding? See, the thing is that we have some act, this was in 2011, which was tabled earlier, which was passed in 2014 and 13, December 2013, which was the last session of Congress. And today we are talking about its amendment. Now, interesting fact was this was itself was a quite a eyewash. Okay, there was nothing as such a protecting the whistleblower. Okay, it was just that Congress was very serious about the corruption. And if you remember that in the last session they have passed 6 acts without any discussion. So this was one of the act to give the signal to the society that we are very serious about the corruption. But if you see, this act primarily was a very weak act. Okay, there was no as such a protection to the victimization of whistleblower. Are you understanding? Now what is happening is in 2015, 1.5 years down the passing of the line, there is no rules, regulations that has to be there to be made into the public in implementation of the act. Act has been passed, but it has not been implemented so far. Now this government is thinking to clamping down further the provision of whistleblower. Are you understanding? First of all, act was a very weak. And second thing is now the current government is trying to clamp it down further. So that, what does it mean? It means that there will be no protection available and therefore it will be an eyewash. So what I hope you are getting the gist of the question. Okay. Now you have to see that what are the amendments then? What are these amendments specifically regarding? See, in case of a whistleblower, as the word itself says, that blow the whistle, it means that leak some information. So information is called as disclosure. Okay. So the whole act is trying to define what you can disclose and what you cannot disclose. So any kind of a liberal whistleblower protection act, which is a Patriot Act in case of America, it's a quite liberal act where you see that you can blow the whistle with regard to the private, with regard to the companies, with regard to the government, etc., etc. So quite a liberal act you will see. So you see here there is no that liberty in case of an India. So this disclosure means what you are going to disclose. So now they are saying that we will make certain exceptions, or we will, ऐसे जैसे star बनाया conditions कि these only you can leak, and anything other than this if you will leak, then you will not have a protection. Now the first very interesting point the amendment says, only RTI obtained information, only RTI obtained information, if you leak this information, then only you will get. It means that in bracket we will give you the information and you leak that information. That is the whistleblowing. So anything other than that you are going to leak, you will not get the protection. That's as simple as that. That's why the word they are saying, there will be no one who will be left. Now what are the ramifications of this? Let's try and understand what has been in the past. There was a CBI head, what is this, Ranjit Sinha. So Ranjit Sinha ki kaun si information leak hui thi? This is diaries were there. Yes, I hope you remember. Okay, so people who are visiting him, by visiting the people, so everything has got into the public domain. So now some diary of somebody is not an RTI information, obviously. So if you are going to leak this information, you will going to land in trouble, and the whistleblowing says we do not. So you have to read the ramification also, that how it is going to happen. Second thing, important one, they are going to say that any kind of a disclosure which will harm, now these are very famous words, national interest, okay, core national interest, then sovereignty of country, territorial integrity, etc., etc. मतलब जो भी national interest है. Now these are very vague and undefined words. What comes under this? It means that anything. See, for example, defense procurement में कुछ चीज़ें. What will be the ramification of this? If in case of a defense procurement, if anything is there, anything goes wrong, like we have the deal. कौन सा था वो? Augusta Westland. So think of any kind of such deal, and if you are leaking the information. Now defense information comes as a sensitive information, so called as sensitive information. So if you leak the defense information or any information which hampers the national interest, which is vaguely defined, you will not get the protection. Are you understanding? So that's an important thing. Third thing, they say that corporate information. So corporate related any kind of the information will not give the protection. So no Neera Reddy, what is her name? Neera Reddy. Okay, no Isar Mail. Isar Mail, I hope you know. Okay, so there are different scams which has been exposed by the whistleblowers. So that also will not be there. then there is a contract which is there in between lawyer and the client. So lawyer gets much of the information through the client, and if that contractual information, if somebody catch hold of that information and if he leaks the information, that protection is also not there. Are you understanding? Any kind of information which comes under the contempt of court will not be there. Any kind of information which contempt of legislature or prohibited by legislature will not be there. So there is a list of different star, मतलब इसको क्या क्या आता है, इसको छोड़ के जो information आप click करोगे, you will get the protection. So in a sense it means that it is taking everything away from the whistleblower and there is no protection. So this, you see that if this kind of the act will be passed, then there will be no one to blow the whistle. So in this regard it is very important that you can even quote the Ashok Khemka also, because as per this act, CVC will not entertain any kind of the complaint which is, or the leak which is given by the whistleblower, unless and until there is a certification for the government that none of what he has been leaked come under this exception. Matlab, government has to certify that yes, whatever the whistleblower has leaked the information, it does not come under this, so you can now take the complaint. Are you understanding how the whole thing is? So therefore it is said that nobody will be left, critically evaluate. Some of the points you can still say that still the right of the whistleblower has been retained, because critically evaluate एक दो point डाल दो कि whistleblower का act पूरा खत्म नहीं हुआ है. It has been aligned with the Right to Information Act, freedom of expression, national sovereignty and territorial integrity. So these points are also important. Like say for example, कल Edward Snowden आ जाएगा तो फिर जैसे अमेरिका के साथ हुआ इंडिया के साथ ना हो. So these are the good intentions that also you have to write, one or two intentions if at all you want to write. Are you understanding? Okay. So this is about the whistleblowing. Yes, any other question? We have to take all questions. You can say any other question. Corporate governance लेना है क्या? कहाँ? 11th. Public health लेना है. Okay, question number 12. Public health. How many of you have wrote this paper? How many of you? Okay. How was it for you? Okay. ठीक है. So yes, universal health coverage. Public health. See, there are some questions except this whistleblower and these things. Even if you don't know anything, like say for example, self-help group, public health. There was a question regarding the this higher education involvement. These are all very general questions. If you know problems, if you know the solutions, if you don't know anything, what are the advantages of private players in any sector, still you can manage with this question. Okay. Now let's see that how you can manage. Public health system has a limitation in providing the universal health coverage. Do you think that the private sector could help in bridging the gap? What other viable alternatives do you suggest? There are two questions. So first of all, again there is a debate. This question is on the line because there is a draft in the public domain. I hope you know that. What was the draft regarding the health policy? Yes, there is a draft in public domain that is regarding the health policy, new health policy. So in that new health policy, there are a lot of discussion with regard to increasing the GDP on the health expenditure, the percentage of GDP that has to be spent on the health. Also regarding this debate regarding the universal health coverage. Now you see here, what is, we generally talk about, say for example, right to health. To be made as a fundamental right, or for that matter, universal health coverage. So universal health coverage means everybody will have the sort of a right for the health, and it will be a legal right. Say for example, like for example, in case of a MG Narega, you have an employment right. In case of food security, you have food right. So can we make it legal and can we give the universal health coverage? See, for example, there is nothing wrong in passing the legislature, but if you do not have the resources to provide, okay, the service, then it will boomerang. Certainly, because in case of a food security act, so you have to take into account whether we have that much of food with us, that is with the government, to provide. So if you are writing something as an act, then you have to mind the resources also. But in case of a public health sector, you see that there is a lot of crunch of resources. So there is a crunch of resources, and therefore there is a difficulty in providing the universal health coverage. So resource is the most important point in providing. So there are limitations. So what are the limitations for regarding the fund? Regarding second is regarding lack of physical infrastructure. Lack of physical infrastructure. You can go specific also. Primary health center, secondary health center, tertiary healthcare centers. So physical infrastructure. Then there is a lack of doctors or human resource. You can say that trained or human resource, doctors, nurses, paramedical staff. Okay, medical and paramedical staff is a component of human resource. So आपके पास पैसे नहीं है, physical infrastructure नहीं है, people नहीं है. Okay, and therefore now in this situation, so the question is saying there are limitation in providing universal health care. So these are the limitation. Now against this context, do you think that the private sector could help in bridging the gap? Now you have to bring the private sector. You can start with saying that most of the secondary and the tertiary care in case of India is being provided by private sector only. I think almost 80% of the services is being provided by the private sector. So because there is a dearth of the fund, because physical infrastructure, human infrastructure, so these are already expertise in secondary and tertiary healthcare. So they have the people, they have the fund with them, and therefore they can rope in. That is a public-private partnership, or private players can be brought in providing the this bridging the gap. So you can see that how the gaps can be bridged. तो अगर आपको कहीं पे कुछ पता नहीं रहता है तो कोई भी उसको systems approach लगा दो. I hope everybody knows system approach. Okay, ecosystem वाला. There are elements and there are functions. So doctors, nurses, drugs. Okay, drugs मतलब obviously medicines. Okay, so physical infrastructure, fund, administrative competence, expertise. तो यही लिख देना है उसमें. ठीक है, what will happen if they will be there? There is a timely drug supply. Okay, assured drug supply, cheap availability. There is a research and development. Do not forget about it. R&D, fund, physical infrastructure, expertise, etc., etc. So you can say that yes, they can able to fill the gap. And in fact, you can say that they are more expert in secondary and tertiary care. So that way, universal health coverage can be given. But again, the private players will be interested in profit also. It's not that it's not about the philanthropy. So the question, so you can address and reserve those points in addressing the other part. That is, what are the viable alternatives? Okay, the word is viable. क्या मतलब बहुत ज़्यादा हवा में फेंक के भी फायदा नहीं है. Okay, viable alternatives क्या क्या है? So viable alternatives, yes. What are the viable alternatives? Can think of alternatives. Awareness से coverage कैसे हो जाएगा? Awareness will supplement. हाँ, Ayush you can think of. Yes, very good. So one is Ayush. हाँ, योगा है शायद इसमें. ठीक है. So much of हाँ. Yes, so you can discuss that also. You can reserve that in conclusion. Okay, ऐसे थोड़े से मतलब अच्छे पॉइंट कंक्लूजन में लिखने चाहिए. प्रिवेंटिव, क्यूरेटिव वगैरह वगैरह. मतलब there has to be a attitudinal change, there has to be more emphasis on preventive aspect, etc. अभी बताइए कि मतलब बीमार तो लोग पड़ने ही वाले हैं, उनको कैसे मैनेज किया जाए. आयुष is one thing that we have alternative medicines. This modalities available, so you can rope in, you can professionalize them, you can train them, and that human resource also can be utilized. That's the one.
Sir, viability gap funding to private investors.
Okay, private investors. What else? That is within the private investors. What else? और बताइए. हाँ, generic drug. You can say that use of the TKDL also you mention some other way, or maybe you can say that generic drugs. ये TKDL क्वेश्चन आया हुआ है कहीं पे. आई थिंक पेपर 3 में आया हुआ है. TKDL पता है? हाँ, ट्रेडिशनल knowledge digitalization library, हाँ. So this is basically जो इंडिया का एज ओल्ड नॉलेज है, okay, not the surgery of कौन सी सर्जरी बोल रहे थे वो, गणेशा, that is not that traditional knowledge, but जो herbal medicine and these kind of the knowledge which is there, which has been digitalized, that digitalized हाँ can be certainly be used for the production of the generic drugs which can be cheaply available in the market. So that also you can discuss. What else? Yes. NGOs also, you can rope in certain NGOs, although NGOs have been clamped down again, but you can liberalize them, you can regulate them, such way you can take the help of the NGOs also. You can also quote something like Bill Gates Foundation, okay, who is doing an stupendous task in case of a tuberculosis, malaria, AIDS, cancer, okay, so one or two NGOs you can also quote with regard to the health sector, okay. WHO collaboration, international collaboration, NGOs. What else?
Sir, in Skill India, we are training people on healthcare also.
Healthcare.
6 months, yes.
Okay, fine. You can also say that with regard to the ASHA, okay, that model, that the community-based model where you can train in person, more number of people can be trained on that line at a decentralized level. Okay. Yes, it is a part of public health system, some of the part. We are restructuring, more thrust can be given, this kind of thing. Okay, कहाँ से लाएंगे आप? हाँ, I am remembering one thing. You can also discuss about micro insurance. This is going to be the most important thing for the times to come. You know the person Devi Shetty? Yes, anybody from medical? Who is the Devi Shetty?
So Bangalore, Narayana.
हाँ, वो है cardio surgeon.
Insurance, 1 rupee insurance.
Yes, so that model you can discuss. There is a Devi Shetty who is a cardiologist who runs the tertiary care hospital, super specialty hospital, but he has come up with this innovative model, something which is very on the same line as that of the Grameen Bank model of Yunus, क्या नाम है, यूनिस खान, मोहम्मद यूनिस, हाँ, मोहम्मद यूनिस का जो मॉडल है माइक्रो फाइनेंस, वही माइक्रो इंश्योरेंस. सो 1 rupees of insurance, so more the people will give you the money, then it will be easy for you to mobilize the resources and you give them the basic insurance. Okay, so that's also called as micro insurance. So you can say that Devi Shetty's model of micro insurance that also can be replicated on a mass scale. In fact, this model is also that we are using in case of this accidental insurance, जो 12 rupees का insurance है, उसमें काफ़ी सारे मतलब वो है conditions जैसे है. But the thing is that minimum money, because there is out of the pocket expenditure, this word, out of the pocket expenditure for the health is very high, and in case of India, poverty line जो हम discuss कर रहे हैं, उसमें से अगर out of the pocket, if your expenditure is going on the health, it will be too costly for a common man to spend on the health. So if they are at least reserving 2 rupees, 5 rupees, 10 rupees, then they can be assured with the health coverage. Okay, so resource crunch भी solve हो जाएगा problem, and they will get the benefits also. So these are the alternative mechanism you can think simultaneously. Public.
Private players with the NCO to the accreditation policy, so can it be measured? Like
Pardon me.
ensuring in the hospitals, they fulfill the policy of the accreditation policy. You know, the
हाँ, accreditation policy, quality norms बढ़ाने के लिए वगैरह, that has a role, because you see most of the private hospitals, this run the hospitals, but they do not follow the norms. So in that regard, for the better quality, accreditation will be of a great help. Okay.
So, and in the case of private sector, the bridging the gap, there is a commercialization of health. I mean, tubectomy case 2-3 years.
Yes. That point is there, but the question is really not asking you to critically assess and what are the lacunas of commercialization of the health. You can always say, if you are very concerned about that aspect, there has to be a regulatory framework which can regulate the private players also. While health insurance, that is there. I think on the Atal Bihari Vajpayee's birthday, the 3 schemes were about to come. I think they have came or they have been dropped. They are in place. Okay, so you can write that also. ठीक है. One more thing is I am remembering, अगर मॉडल लिखना है तो चाइना में barefoot doctors करके एक concept है. If anybody knows barefoot doctors, okay, barefoot doctors means local level पे जिसको भी knowledge है, traditional knowledge, they will go and visit. Government will give some sort of an benefits to them. So that also concept can be applied. हाँ, झोला छाप डॉक्टर्स हमारे यहाँ ज़्यादा हो जाते हैं, फिर उसके भी प्रॉब्लम्स है. ओके, सो दैट्स इट. What else? Question number 13. Okay, poverty. 11th is also pending. We will take after 13. Okay. Though there have been several different estimates of poverty in India, all indicate reduction in the poverty level over time. Do you agree? Critically examine the reference to urban and rural poverty indicators. Interesting question in a sense that question is talking about there has been a reduction of poverty, and they have questioned it also, do you agree? Now most of the time whenever we see the poverty, malnutrition, we tend to jump to the conclusion that there is no as such reduction. But statistically there has been a reduction. Okay, if you take any parameter, be it a Tendulkar committee report, be it a Rangarajan committee, be it a World Bank's $1 criteria or $1.25 criteria, in all the three there has been a substantial reduction. Okay, there can be a question with regard to the methodology that you have applied that we can discuss later, but on all the parameters there has been reduction. In fact, you could have related with the Millennium Development Goal also. Millennium Development Goal says that half, मतलब halving, okay, half करना है जो भी statistics था 2000 का. So I think 2000 का statistics something around 46-47% था. So you wanted to achieve it to the 23%. Now in case of Tendulkar का कितना हुआ था? 21.9%. Rangarajan 29.8. हाँ 29.5 है शायद, ठीक है 30 ऐसे. Okay, so even if this may not match with 23, but at least there is a substantial reduction from 47 to 30. And if you take the World Bank, as per the Rangarajan says, in fact my criteria is close to $1.45, I think $2.15 जो इन्होंने criterias दिए हैं, economic criteria. If he says that if you compare my criteria on the purchasing power parity, it is close to 2.5. So do not criticize me that it is a destitute poverty line and this poverty line. So it is as compared to the international standard. So you can say that even on the World Bank criteria, if you put extreme or very very poverty, what they say, that is 1 पहले था, अभी 1.25 है. हाँ अभी चेंज हुआ है नहीं, आई एम सेइंग द अर्लियर व्हेन इट वाज इन मिलेनियम डेवलपमेंट गोल वाला था. सो ऑन दोज बेसिस यू हैव टू अग्री विद द स्टेटमेंट दैट अगर आपको बहुत ज़्यादा मतलब एनालिटिकल लिखना है तो स्टैटिस्टिकली वी हैव बीन सक्सेसफुली एबल टू come down to the poverty level. So you can say that this, some of the criteria, some of the statistic record you can say that, or if you are not knowing anything, at least you can mention that India has जो मिलेनियम डेवलपमेंट गोल है उसमें से 2 या 3 गोल इंडिया हैज बीन एबल टू अचीव. वन इज पॉवर्टी, सेकेंड इज इन्फेंट मोर्टेलिटी, आई थिंक दे आर क्लोज. हाँ, एजुकेशन, प्राइमरी एनरोलमेंट, and third thing is I think it is regarding the sanitation, safe drinking water. 94 or 90% of the thing they have achieved. Anyways, so there are 3 things. One of the thing is about the poverty. So you can say that as per the Millennium Development Goal, or if you do not know anything, you can say that in the last decade there has been substantial reduction. You can also mention this credit can be given to Congress. Nahi, Narega. So you can mention some of the things. Okay, so Narega or food security policy that you can explain. Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, these are the aspects you can discuss about it, which has helped in increasing the economy of an poorest of poor. So in that regard, so this is the first paragraph that you can discuss about it. Second is critically examine the reference to the urban and the rural poverty indicators. Now again you require statistics, but think of it's very next to impossible. Now we are discussing it is okay for us to know the statistic, but if at least you do not know, you can minimum says that in case of an urban and rural comparison that rural poverty is still very intensive or there is a prevalence is a very high as compared to the urban. If you have statistics, you can talk about it, relative comparison between the two. If you do not have the statistic, at least you can make this assessment that in comparison. Also, you can talk about, once you have said, because the question is about critically examine. Now, having established your points, it has been reduced and this is this much, there starts the analytical part of your answer. So in case of analytical part, you can bring 2-3 different dimensions. First dimensions you can bring in, even if the percentage has been down, the absolute figure is very high. So first point you can discuss regarding the absolute figure. Okay, so you can write some of the itne crore hai, itne millions hai, they are still under the poverty line. Second, you can see that there is a substantial reduction in the poverty, but there is an increase in the disparity. This is very important. This disparity, inequality, not just economic, it is about the difference in between. See, the thing is that, let me put it this graphically, if this is below poverty line, okay, now maybe the people have come above the below poverty line, but this APL or जो भी है वो यहाँ तक चली गई है. So the gap in between the rich and the poor is very, very big over a period of time. Although people have slightly come above the below poverty line, but the gap in between rich and poor has increased exponentially. Okay, there is a I think in economics you must have studied Gini coefficient. Okay, so you can discuss that the Gini coefficient is very high. And you see that the redistribution, it is not in comparison with the growth. जितनी growth हुई है, okay, उतनी growth rate में हमारे पास poverty उतनी substantially income has not been redistributed. There is a problem of redistribution. In fact, there was a very interesting question in paper 3. I think there was a question number 1. India is a jobless growth. So उसमें भी काफ़ी सारे ये issues है कि growth तो हो रही है, लेकिन there are no availability of the job. In the same way, यहाँ पे poverty has reduced, but there are certain dilemmas within the poverty. Absolute number is high, disparity is high. What else you can write? You can also now start questioning poverty line ke upar you can question now. Okay, so what should be the criteria? These criteria that we have employed are a very, you can say that Tendulkar committee has not taken into account non-food items, although the Ranganathan committee has taken into account non-food items. But that is only with regard to the food items, because it is a 29% जो हम claim कर रहे हैं. It is only a unidimensional with regard to the calorie expenditure, monthly calorie expenditure. Then you can see that there is a multi-poverty index. Poverty is not just about the accessibility for the income, but it is also about the health, education, standard of living, some other criteria. So it is more of a not an abstract concept, it is a relative things that also required to be seen. Because if you have kept only a unidimensional one criteria, that is, I think it comes down to around 37 rupees for the urban, and how much? Anybody knows about the?
32 and 47.
32 and 47. Yes, 32 for the rural and 47 for the urban. So 32 में अगर आप poverty define कर रहे हो, certainly your poverty will going to get down. Okay. So what is required is you have to revisit the concept of the poverty. You have to discuss about the disparities. So these are the problems. Otherwise उस question में बहुत ज़्यादा critically examine करने के लिए नहीं है. अगर आपके पास बहुत ही अच्छे statistic है rural urban के, you know that reasons for the rural urban, then also you can take that way. Yes, you want to say something?
Obvious they can criticize this both models.
Yes, you can criticize. That is what I am saying. You can criticize, but in the first part you have to, they are not questioning them. They are simply saying that whatever may be the methodology or criteria they have applied, we have been able to reduce the numbers, on the numbers. Then you can question that, no, this methodology itself is too shallow and wrong. So certainly we will get the less number, and you can suggest that if you apply more broader criterias, we will not see the reduction. This way you can criticize.
So he said that household survey and all.
Yes, you can discuss. See, the thing is that I still believe that Rangarajan is very decent one. Okay, because see, the thing is that 3 improvements which were important, he has made it. First of all, the improvement is यहाँ पे केवल food items थे, इन्होंने non-food items भी include किया है. He has included health, he has included the education. Second thing is, this criticism of 37 and 42, whatever the figure is not correct. Because Rangarajan has not calculated on the per individual basis. He has calculated on a household basis. So household basis में economic में जो concept है, economy of commonality, economy of volume. अगर आप 5 एक घर में रह रहे हो, तो 50-50-50 का कलेक्ट करो 250 रुपए, तो एक घर के लिए वो सफिशिएंट होता है. ओके, सो दैट वे ऑल्सो ही हैज मेड सर्टन इम्प्रूवमेंट्स फॉर दिस तेंदुलकर. एंड सेकंड इज अबाउट मिक्स मॉडिफाइड मिक्स रिकॉल पीरियड, तो उसमें भी कुछ मॉडिफिकेशन है. सो यू कैन सी दैट, बट अगेन अर्णव गोस्वामी का अगर चैनल देखोगे तो 23 रुपए में क्या आ जाएगा, 25 रुपए में क्या आ जाएगा. सो यू कैन ब्रिंग दैट रिटोरिक्स ऑल्सो. Okay, he himself has suggested that, it is very important that some of the points of his report has been ignored always, that always, which is, here you can bring in this also, socio-economic caste census. इन्होंने भी poverty line अभी draw की है. So there are 5 categories of people which will be always poor, okay, irrespective of their income. जैसे है primitive tribal group, destitutes, those who are beggars, और दोनों कोई ग्रुप है, हाँ, लैंडलेस फार्मर्स और लेबरर्स. दीज आर द 5 ग्रुप्स विच विल बी ऑलवेज देयर. दिस पॉइंट हैज ऑलरेडी बीन स्टेटेड बाय द रंगराजन कि ये मैं एक दे रहा हूँ, बट फॉर एवर द 30% ऑफ द रूरल पीपल, इर्रेस्पेक्टिव ऑफ वट एवर दे आर, दोज हु आर एट द बिलो पॉवर्टी लाइन, शुड बी ऑलवेज कंसिडर्ड एज अ पुअर. इट मीन्स दैट ही इज ट्राइंग टू ब्रिंग इन दिस डिस्पैरिटी इशू. अगर पिरामिड निकालोगे तो 30% हमेशा ही पुअर रखो, और अर्बन में 25% हमेशा पुअर रखो. आर यू अंडरस्टैंडिंग? बट देन यू हैव द पॉइंट्स टू क्रिटिसाइज ऑल्सो, सो यू कैन गो अहेड विद दैट ऑल्सो. यस, विच क्वेश्चन? 16 आपका भी लेंगे. 16 क्या है? 16 हायर एजुकेशन नहीं है, रेगुलेटरी बॉडीज. See, the point is, post-mortem is always easy, ठीक है, but operation, doing an operation is very difficult. यहाँ पे मतलब आपको बहुत मतलब अब there will be and scores of material will come on this. हर मैगजीन आ जाएंगे, ये आ जाएंगे, यहाँ से आया था, ये यहाँ से आया था. But when we are reading, they are not dancing कि हम आने वाले हैं करके. Okay, when you are reading, you have to read everything. Like say for example, पेंटिंग है, मीजोलिथिक पेंटिंग आया है. अब वो मीजोलिथिक पेंटिंग कहाँ नहीं दिया है. यू ओपन एनी काइंड ऑफ द पेंटिंग, 100 पेंटिंग दिए हुए हैं, उसमें मीजोलिथिक भी एक है, बट वो तब तो डांस नहीं कर रहा था ना कि मैं आने वाला हूँ. तो पॉइंट इज यू आर गोइंग टू फॉरगेट समथिंग. व्हाट इज इंपॉर्टेंट इज यू शुड रिमेंबर द क्रक्स ऑफ इट. मीजोलिथिक में एक ही क्रक्स था कि वो भिम्बेटका है, पूरा ट्राइबल, मतलब जिनको कुछ भी नहीं आता है वो है, और वो एकदम पत्थर से पेंटिंग बनाते थे और उसमें कलर डालते थे. दिस मच वाज इनफ. ओके, सो एटलीस्ट यू शुड नॉट मिस. प्रिपरेशन करते समय क्या होता है कि 10 के 10 पॉइंट्स याद रखूंगा, ठीक है, एंड देन इवेंचुअली 3 days के बाद 100 पॉइंट्स हो जाते हैं, तो 10 पॉइंट्स इवेंचुअली यू विल मिस. यू शुड, आई एम नॉट डिस्करेजिंग यू, बट यू शुड नॉट मिस द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट एंड द कोर एस्पेक्ट्स, बिकॉज बिलीव मी, none of, मतलब including, I hope, I will be optimistic about you, but not able to have a good finishing touch for all the questions at his personal satisfaction level. Forget about satisfaction level of UPSC. एक अपना भी खुद रहता है ना satisfaction की, इतना पता था, इतना लिख के आए, वो भी नहीं होता है, ठीक है. So do not worry about these points. General आपको एक मतलब वो ना कर्म करो, अपना तो पूरा का पूरा करना रहता है, फिर बाद में फल की अपेक्षा करते रहना यूपीएससी का आंसर देने के बाद, ठीक है. सो इनफैक्ट दिस क्वेश्चंस, दिस हायर एजुकेशन, दिस हेल्थ, रेगुलेटरी, अब रेगुलेटरी बॉडी के प्रॉब्लम्स पता ही रहते. देखो यहाँ पे आप बैठो, अब मैं क्वेश्चन भी नहीं पढ़ रहा हूँ. व्हाट आर द प्रॉब्लम्स ऑफ रेगुलेटरी बॉडी. रेगुलेटरी बॉडी कोई भी एक रैंडम ले लो, जैसे इलेक्ट्रिसिटी बॉडी है. ओके, इलेक्ट्रिसिटी बॉडी के क्या प्रॉब्लम रहेंगे. रेगुलेटरी बॉडी, द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ रेगुलेशन एंड रेगुलेटरी बॉडी हैज came into existence to bring the professionalism. Okay, अब जैसे इलेक्ट्रिसिटी बॉडी में बहुत सारे प्रॉब्लम्स है इलेक्ट्रिसिटी से रिलेटेड. एक सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट प्रॉब्लम है कि व्हाट इज द यूटिलिटी चार्जेस, जो मीटर के चार्जेस रहते हैं. रेगुलेटरी बॉडी विल रिकमेंड देयर विल बी अ 10 rupees पर यूनिट. ओके, वो रिकमेंडेशन जाएगा पॉलिटिकल क्लास के पास. पॉलिटिकल क्लास 10 रुपये कब लगाएंगे, वो 15 rupees कब लगाएंगे. दे विल नॉट गोइंग टू डू इट. दे विल free of cost electricity or 5 rupees electricity, 2 rupees electricity for the farmers. So what is the question is asking is, you have created the regulatory bodies with a novel intention, but they lack the independence and autonomy. Are you understanding? So in all the regulatory bodies, there is a problem that you have created the structures, okay, and there are written goals also. They gave the recommendation also, but then there is a political class which manipulates everything. Are you understanding? And therefore, the goal, the purpose of the regulatory body will get defeated. Are you understanding? So that's the crux. So let me read. For achieving the desired objectives, it is necessary to ensure that regulatory institutions remain independent and autonomous. Discuss in light of experiences in the recent past. Okay, so first of all, can you name some of the most important regulatory bodies where the issue can be discussed? SEBI, FMC, हाँ सबसे important मतलब favorite one try, हाँ IRDA insurance regarding, UGC also, SEBI, हाँ FMC, हाँ चलो okay that's it. So you can electricity boards in general जो भी tariff related रहते हैं. Now you can introduce that regulatory body. वही introduction जो बताया था कि regulatory body tries to bring the professionalism. Okay, public administration. RBI is also one of the regulatory body, but देखो question पूछा है, question the independence and autonomy. That is a one organization which I believe is quite independent and autonomous. Nobody can question Raghuram Ranjan. You say what you want to say, I am going to do what I want to do. Okay. So RBI is where we see that the authority is so much that more or less it is a independent. You can write, matlab RBI also you can certainly write, but in fact in recent times there has been an agreement. It is a monetary policy, which agreement? Monetary policy comprehensive agreement which has been signed between the government and the RBI, where now whatever the frictions which was there in between RBI is going to get resolved, and RBI is coming forward to make itself accountable for the inflation target. So more or less जो उनकी autonomy है with regard to the inflation control उनको है, but yes you can mention that also. A point is we do not have to take one specific RBI or SEBI or anything. We have to in general discuss, and they have asked us in light of some of the recent experience how autonomy is important. In fact, this is one of the important thing. This is try because 2G spectrum का scam जो हुआ था. Now the secretary and TRI का person बोलता है कि I have given the pious recommendations, but the government has not listened to it. So accountability has not been fixed whether Dr. Manmohan Singh, who was heading the ministry that time, should be held responsible, or TRI should be held responsible, or telecom secretary should be held responsible. So this is a problem. Now if you speak about TRI will see that we have given the advices which was quite rational, but the political class has not able to take this recommendation. So this is where we see, you can give this example. Electricity board का तो अभी दिया था. FMC का scam, that's where we see that the failure of FMC. Now FMC क्या है? Forward Market Commission. So इसका क्या issue था currently? हाँ, there was a NSCL scam, that is a National Spot Exchange. हाँ, whatever. Those scam के कारण क्या हुआ कि FMC was initially was under what? Yes, Finance Ministry. Yes, FMC was initially under the Finance Ministry. Now this is what we see the political mileage or political influence that they can have on FMC, but because of this scam, now the FMC has been transferred to SEBI. So this is one example you can give, that political influence, and this is a good example. Otherwise first scam हो गया और फिर बाद में shift कर दिया for the autonomy. Question is, now let's come to the question properly, that it is saying that remain independent and autonomous. So first you define regulatory bodies and their function, and then second, in the first para, you are talking about what is regulatory bodies and what are the rationale that is to bring about the professionalism. Second, you talk regarding the problems of regulatory bodies. So problems of regulatory bodies, you can start from the appointment, removal, and the procedural process. Like appointment is a political most of the times. Then again, there is a political influence during the process. Removal के time में भी political influence है. So you can say that there is a political influence during the time of appointment, during the time of decision taking, during the time of removal. The recommendation which have been given by the regulatory bodies, they have been ignored consistently. There was always a populistic measures that has come forth in many cases, such as, so there you can quote also, जहाँ से भी आपको जो example पता है, 2G स्पेक्ट्रम स्कैम है, इलेक्ट्रिसिटी बोर्ड के प्रॉब्लम्स है, FMC का प्रॉब्लम है, UGC का इंडिपेंडेंस नहीं है, तो हाउ द UGC इज ऑलमोस्ट बिकम अ डिफंक्ट और not able to carry forward its agenda because of the political pressure. So you can write about that. Discuss in light of recent examples, and then you can also discuss the Satyam scandal also if you want to, but it is not very recent, but SEBI के अंदर है तो, but it is more of a corporate related scam था. SEBI का कितना रोल है, that was not been fixed in that. So आप ये पहले problem लिखो and then you have to give the solutions that in a sense that the real intention and motive that has to be upholded by giving them more independence, more autonomy, by bringing more professionalism. प्रोफेशनलिज्म उसमें जो एक्सपर्टीज़ रहते हैं उनकी जो अपॉइंटमेंट है मेरिट बेसिस के ऊपर होनी चाहिए. देयर विल बी अ लेस रोल फॉर द पॉलिटिकल क्लास. ओके, सो दीज आर द जनरल पॉइंट्स है, बहुत ज़्यादा वो नहीं है, इन ऑर्डर टू शो दैट what is the intended role that they will going to meet. I hope the point is clear. Okay, so you have to go around this some of the points regarding the problems and the solutions. Yes, another question. Corporate governance, question number. Yes, somewhere sir was telling about 2 साल के पहले वाले क्वेश्चन, तो काफ़ी सारे क्वेश्चन, yes they are 1 or 2 year old, मतलब इतना ज़्यादा कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस. लास्ट ईयर भी आई थिंक देयर वाज अ क्वेश्चन 2013 में क्वेश्चन आया था, कॉर्पोरेट एक्ट 2013, उसके ऊपर डिस्कशन. क्वेश्चन नंबर कौन सा है? 14. Okay, yes. In light of Satyam scandal, discuss the changes brought in the corporate governance to ensure the transparency and accountability. This requires, there are certain technical points and there are certain general points. If you know general points, you can also brought in an answer. If you do not know, if you know the specific points, then also you can fetch more marks. It is basically talking about amendments to Companies Act 2013. That is the primary. बाकी तो रेगुलेशन बढ़ाना, फिर रेगुलेटरी बॉडीज़ है, फिर व्हाट यू कैन से दैट. यस, फर्स्ट लेट्स टॉक अबाउट द कंपनीज एक्ट. कंपनीज एक्ट 2013. सो व्हाट आर द अमेंडमेंट्स और व्हाट हैव बीन द न्यू थिंग्स दैट हैव कम इन ऑर्डर टू maintain the good corporate governance. In fact, this question is also a part of ethics. Okay, whistle blowing also, and this also. In case of ethics paper, you have good corporate governance. So in case of good corporate governance, if you know only principles of good corporate governance, you can write that, and certainly whenever the act is an improvement over the earlier act, they are going to address all the problems which are there in the corporate governance. Okay, so पहला कहाँ है? Corporate governance is a profit-making organization. Who takes the decision? Board of directors. So the first one where the culprits were the board of directors. So इन culprit को ठीक करना है. So what was the first point? That was board of directors should have independent directors. Okay, that is a 1/3 of the board of directors should be independent directors. So this is the single most important point, because what is an independent director? हाँ, not having any share with regard to the company, direct profit नहीं होता है, and independent directors are basically to safeguard the interest of minority shareholders. Minority, because there are Tata Birla, Adani Ambani, जिनको टाटा बिरला पहले कहा जाता था, आज उनको अदानी अंबानी कहा जाता है. तो those are going to influence the board of directors, because board of directors are nothing but the puppet in the hands of big corporate class. So this board of directors earlier used to go for the profit and profiteering, okay, unreasonable profit. So now the government is saying that all board of directors, that composition should be changed, and it should have one third of the people which are the independent directors. So independent director are going to take the decision, which is primarily a very legitimate decision, taking into account the shareholders' interest. Are you understanding? Second, if you know the Satyam scam, या फिर इनकी accountability कहाँ पे होती है? That is a audit mechanism. Okay, so that's the most important part. So audit is, in fact, this is where we see in case of a Satyam scam, auditors were involved. There was a forgery with regard to the audit and accounts. And when the scam was out, we have seen that board of directors and the auditors have not able to give the signals. So यहाँ पे इन्होंने काफ़ी सारे reforms लाए हैं. What are the reforms? Yes, anybody knows? In case of audit, first of all, if you don't know anything, at least you should able to write कि जनरली मैकेनिज्म क्या रहता है कॉर्पोरेट में, दैट इज इंटरनल ऑडिटिंग. अब इंटरनल ऑडिटिंग आपकी कंपनी है, आप ही ऑडिट करवा रहे हो, तो व्हाट विल बी द सॉल्यूशन? सो दिस फोकसेस अपॉन द एक्सटर्नल ऑडिट मैकेनिज्म. देयर हैज टू बी एन इंडिपेंडेंट ऑडिटिंग, बट along with the independent auditing there has to be a external audit, and this external audit, or you can say that it is also called as independent audit. Independent audit. So अगर कुछ नहीं आता है तो vibrant audit mechanism, robust audit mechanism has to be there so as to place the accountability of the board of governance so that nothing decision can go against the shareholder. Independent audit है, इसमें इन्होंने और बताया है कि अगर आप individual auditor हो तो 5 years के बाद आपका rotation होगा. अगर आप audit firm हो तो आपका 10 years के बाद rotation होगा. Rotation is important because if there is a no rotation, then always there is an unholy nexus. Okay, इंडिया में मतलब तू मेरा भाई है, आप मेरे वो हो, okay, खाना पीना मतलब वो चलता रहता है. That's the reason where they are saying that the rotation is also must. So if there is an independent auditor, there will be a 5-yearly rotation, and if there is an independent firm, then there will be a 10-yearly rotation. Also, it has been given if any scam is there with regard to an auditing, and if they will also be held responsible and liable. It's not just the board of directors who will be held responsible. So auditors will be held responsible. In fact, auditors have been given the right and the duty, in fact duty, if they sense any sort of a fraud, they have to inform to the corporate affairs ministry. Okay, so they have to inform that this is what is happening, and I sense this is going to be a scam, so they have to inform. So this is where we see that board of directors and auditors. Third, you can say that what about the whistleblowing? Okay, they are talking about that the company should have clear-cut whistleblowing policy. Okay, written clear-cut whistleblowing policy. So whistleblowing policy aa gayi to you can expand on that any kind of the corruption and the fraud that is there, any employee can expose, and he will be given a due protection. Okay, due protection. So therefore whatever the corruption, any kind of the scandal, if the employee knows about it, he will expose it. Okay, so that will be there. Fourth is now अगर लोग है, कंज्यूमर है या एम्प्लॉयज़ है, अदर एम्प्लॉयज़, बहुत बार क्या होता है, मर्जर एक्विजिशन, विंडिंग ऑफ द प्लांट, इन सच केसेस अकाउंटेबिलिटी ऑफ बोर्ड ऑफ डायरेक्टर्स. नाउ से फॉर एग्जांपल सत्यम स्कैम है, या फिर सुब्रत राय मुखर्जी सहारा स्कैम है. ओके, इन केस ऑफ सहारा स्कैम, व्हाट अबाउट दोज एम्प्लॉयज़? ओके, इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन. इन फैक्ट इन केस ऑफ किंगफिशर वाले का नाम क्या है उनका, हाँ, माल्या जो कंपनी था, so many people have lost their jobs. Okay, in this particular cases, earlier what was the mechanism that you individually can file the suit against the owner of the company. So now you can think of an employee, an individual person versus Vijay Mallya, who is going to win the case. Okay, so for sure it was a very difficult arrangement and asymmetry was there. So this act introduces the concept called as class suit. Okay, क्लास सूट मतलब जितने भी एग्रीव्ड मेंबर्स हैं वो कलेक्टिवली दे कैन फाइल, मतलब दे कैन synergize themselves in terms of finances, in terms of their grievances, and they can file the class suits against the whoever, board of directors or maybe the owners of the company. So board of directors will be held responsible. If you don't know anything, CSR भी लिख दो, मतलब बहुत ज़्यादा डायरेक्ट नहीं है, CSR should be there वगैरह वगैरह. So this is where we see that you can say that the slew of measures has been taken in order to maintain the good corporate governance. This.
And one provision where 1/4 of the shares will be held by public is for all the companies or only public?
1/4 of
1/4 of the share of
listed company. I think, see, there are different guidelines. Yes, you can also add, if you know very specifically, SEBI has also given certain guidelines. You can add that. जो आपके जो guidelines बता रहे हो, ये तो एक company act है. That's what I was saying. You can give the company act is this. SEBI has also, if you know about some of the things, then you can say that the corporate affairs minister, P notes वगैरह, participatory notes, उसमें जो reforms है, FDI में जो reforms है, so these are the norms. मतलब जो पहले anonymous investment was possible, that anonymous investment is no more possible. Are you understanding? I hope you know those things. तो वो एक लिख सकते हो कि सेबी ने क्या नॉर्म्स लिखे हैं, आरबीआई ने क्या कुछ नॉर्म्स है, कंपनीज एक्ट के क्या नए, कॉर्पोरेट मिनिस्ट्री के क्या है. अगर नहीं है तो कुछ एटलीस्ट दिस थिंग्स यू कैन राइट इट. ओके, दिस इज सम ऑफ द टेक्निकल क्वेश्चंस था you have to know about it. Yes, any question number 11, that's it, last. The quality of the higher education in India requires major improvement to make it internationally competitive. Do you think that the entry of the foreign educational institutions would help to improve the quality of higher and technical education in country? Discuss. Again, very cliche question है, मतलब बहुत ज़्यादा. इसमें क्या आपको पता ही है कि मतलब सर्व शिक्षा अभियान है, प्राइमरी है स्कूल में. But in case of a secondary, the situation is secondary, higher secondary, technical education, it is still very poor. In case of Sarva Shiksha also, only the gross enrollment has increased. There is no improvement over the quality. So, 5 years back, there was much of the discussion which was on the primary education. Now that discussion has shifted to the higher secondary and technical education. There was a Yashpal committee report 3-4 years back, so they have extensively talked about this. So, the point is, the quality of higher education in India requires improvement. Now we know that quality is not that good. You can in fact write some of the reports कि जो best university है 100, उसमें कहीं इंडिया की एक भी यूनिवर्सिटी नहीं है. शायद एक यूनिवर्सिटी है, आई है अभी. हाँ, पंजाब यूनिवर्सिटी नहीं है, वो कौन सी, बेंगलोर की है शायद, IISc, as far I know that. नहीं तो वो थापर यूनिवर्सिटी लग रहा है क्या? थापर यूनिवर्सिटी इज देयर इन केस ऑफ पंजाब. ओके, सो दैट्स नॉट देयर. पतंगराव कदम की एक यूनिवर्सिटी है पूना में, भारतीय विद्यापीठ. सो व्हेन वंस द भारतीय विद्यापीठ विल बी इन द टॉप 100, देन वी कैन टेक अ साई ऑफ रिलीफ दैट इंडियाज एजुकेशनल सिस्टम इज पार एक्सलेंट. ओके, अगर वो आ जाए तो. सो दैट्स विल बी द लास्ट पैरामीटर. सो दिस इज आई थिंक इनका भी कुछ 99th rank आया है. Okay, so you can just make a restatement by telling the facts that the quality of education in India is so poor and grim that none of the university is in the 100 or just one is there. Now in this regard again, so you have to state the problem regarding the quality of education, and then there has to be how this solution is in the form of the private universities and private. Actually there is already a bill pending in an Parliament with regard to the this was an earlier bill. Again, it was devised by during the time of UPA government only. So that is involvement or more participation of the foreign universities in India. So do you think that entry will improve the quality and technical education? Discuss. तो क्या बताओगे आप? Yes, certainly. Okay, you have to discuss certain problems if private will come later on, but for the time being, the quality, yes. तो quality के लिए क्या चाहिए रहता है? Infrastructure पहले चाहिए रहता है, तो infrastructure आ जाएगा. Second is, yes, the most important one is they will bring the expertise. Okay, that's the most important. Expertise, और जो आप देखो कि world renowned universities है, जो top 100 है. If you open this, so जो top 100 का जो भी expertise है, जो भी experience है, human resource है, so you can bring in that. So in this way it can improve. Also, when you feel challenged, you improve yourself. Okay, so ऐसी यूनिवर्सिटी आएगी तो यहाँ पे लवली यूनिवर्सिटी है क्या है, हाँ उनको भी इम्प्रूव करना पड़ेगा. सो देर आर यूनिवर्सिटीज़ विद इन इंडिया which will feel challenged and it will create a competitive environment. So this competitive environment will also going to improve the quality. Then you can see that quality के लिए fund is very important because you have to recruit the professors, high skilled professors. So for that उनकी salaries काफ़ी ज़्यादा है. Okay, so if you are not able to bring the infrastructure at the primary school, how you are going to do it at higher level, how you are going to pay them. Most of the renowned scholars are working in Columbia University, American University, ये यूनिवर्सिटी कभी भी देखना जो स्कॉलर्स है जो आर्टिकल लिखते हैं द हिंदू में, सो दे आर ऑलरेडी अ प्रोफेसर इन एमिरात, यूएई, ऐसे तो उनकी जो सैलरी है उसके लिए भी फंड है. तो वही है इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, एक्सपर्टी, फंड, कॉम्पिटिटिवनेस, इम्प्रूविंग क्वालिटी. सो यू कैन राइट दोज थिंग्स. यू कैन से दैट ऑल्सो ऑक्सफोर्ड एंड कैम्ब्रिज कैन बी एट द डोर स्टेप. मतलब कुछ नहीं पता है तो मतलब ऐसे वाले पॉइंट्स तो रहते ही हैं. Okay, so that will be a sort of an environment where we can also learn from them. So that is where we see that there will be interval. Discuss है तो first the primarily you have to discuss this, but then you have to also talk certain concern or problems or issues. क्या क्या हो सकते हैं negative aspects. First is the commercialization of education. Okay, do not forget whenever there is a private, India being a socialist country, okay, कुछ भी मतलब private players, philanthropists में बहुत difference है. They are going to come and there will be a huge fee structure. Fee structure जो रहेगा वो काफ़ी high रहेगा. So it will create a divide between the rich and poor. Okay, so that will be a commercialization of education. First you can talk commercialization of education. Second is you can say that rich and poor divide. Yes, you can tell. Yes, you are saying something.
So absence of
Westernization. हाँ, content of वो तो ठीक है. और बताइए.
absence of effective regulation.
हाँ, वो ज़्यादा important है. That is the regulatory bodies इतनी easy नहीं रहेगी. There is a question on the sovereignty also. देखो FDI जब आ रहा है, MNC आ रहा है, TNC आ रहा है, NGO आ रहा है, कोई भी foreign player, कोई भी foreign player when coming to India on a mass scale, it is going to create an sort of an problem or a friction between the government and the foreign bodies. In the form of challenging the sovereignty, वो issue रहेगा, या फिर regulate these institutions. Different institutions have different norms in their domestic countries, so they want to rewrite the different rules and regulations. So the problem of regulation will be there, commercialization will be there, rich and poor divide will be there. So these are the problems that requires an rethinking नहीं है, मतलब regulation is important. So this you can discuss as a concern. यहाँ पे एक positive point और एक लिख सकते हो. This quality will improve. There will be a universal certification. मतलब your degree will be recognized across the world. There is a lot of problem with regard to your domestic universities है. आपने यहाँ से clear किया है, फिर it getting blacklisted. Then you are being sent Air India से फिर आप वापस आ जा रहे हो. ठीक है, तो that problem won't be there. So there will be a more homogenization, more standardization in the certification, more standardization with respect to the curricula, and this way more or less problem will be resolved. But again, you have to address the concerns also. You understanding? So yes.
Just a basic doubt. How should we approach the questions with different words like discuss, critically analyze, elucidate? What should be the basic word?
Yes, there is emphasis upon this word. And every single word has a specific meaning, a subtle meaning for it. I'll explain that first, and then I'll say that what should be again the approach. Okay, discuss is just, it is open-ended. You take a pro, you take a con, you discuss about it. It's quite a liberal field. Okay, whatever you know, first you write what it is, then you discuss what are the positive. If you wish to write negative, because it is a discussion. Are you understanding? Discussion involves all sort of dimensions. Now, second, what you have said, critically analyze and analyze. Analyze is more of an analytical aspects. It's not just, in case of a discussion, it is more of a, what are the different dimensions which we can see through the eyes. मतलब उसमें बहुत ज़्यादा analysis नहीं रहेगा. लेकिन in case of an analytical discussion, you have a different perspectives. सिंपल ये लॉजिक लेना है कि डिफरेंट स्टेक होल्डर्स यू कैन आइडेंटिफाई, और जैसे सिस्टम अप्रोच बताया था, आइडेंटिफाई डिफरेंट स्टेक होल्डर्स एंड हाउ इट इज गोइंग टू अफेक्ट डिफरेंट स्टेक होल्डर्स. दैट्स द इजीएस्ट वे. क्रिटिकली एनालाइज जब रहता है तो स्पेसिफिकली यू हैव टू आइडेंटिफाई द निगेटिव एस्पेक्ट और problematic aspect, limitations, concerns, challenges. Okay, that should not be missed out in case of critically analyze. It means that there are certain things which are problematic in nature, you have to address again. But the point is, now let me, having said this, all differences, any kind of the question in UPSC asks, they expect pros, positive points, cons, and some of the futuristic solutions. Okay, thank you so much, and all the best.